This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon, hello and welcome to a windy, cloudy afternoon here in the Sabi Sands. My name is Scott Dyson. I'm teamed up with Herb, an expert tracker, as well as Dave on camera. And you just got a glimpse of our resident herd of wildebeest that we've been very, very fortunate in seeing two of them give birth. One of them was yesterday morning and another one was the day before that. They have given birth to a total of 4 in the last week or so, and there was interestingly another one that was born yesterday while we weren't around, but I did see that there was an extra addition yesterday evening when we came back from the sunset safari. So hoping that there's going to be a few more youngsters added to this herd, and we will hopefully be able to follow their growth and their life as they try their best to avoid the predators that lurk through this area. Now, this is a live safari. If any of you are joining for the very first time, we would love to know who you are, where you are watching, and how you would contact us is with the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or depending on whichever platform you may be watching, there may be a comment box where you can just pop a question in there. So let's move a little bit closer, try and get you some views of these young wildebeest. They're incredibly cute. They look a lot different to their parents in that they're caramel brown color, not a gunmetal blue like the adults. And who knows, maybe we'll get lucky and see another live birth this afternoon. That would be incredible. The one that we saw yesterday was from foot, which is absolutely ridiculous and testament to how relaxed these wildebeest are with our presence. Today, however, we've noticed it's a little bit different, and that's probably because of the windy conditions. They're not going to be feeling as confident about our presence, not really because of us, but because of this wind. There could be predators sneaking up on them, and their hearing will be muffled by the wind. Also, every little bush that blows, or tuft of grass, can confuse them, and they could think it might be a predator sneaking up on them in the grass. But then a very nice open clearing here, so I don't think they've got anything to worry about, and we have scoured this property this morning for any predators, and there are none nearby here as far as we are aware. Of course, we could be surprised. Wonderful. So it's not just myself out this afternoon. You will also have the joy of joining up with Tristan as well as Noel as they go about their safari. So why don't you go and see what Tristan's plans are for the afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our very gloomy, dingy, overcast safari. In a special warm welcome to the schools that have joined us this afternoon. I hope that it's going to be a wonderful trip through the African wilderness. Now, my name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got Ferg. And Ferg, have you spotted something? Because Ferg is pointing off in the distance. Straight ahead. What have you spotted, Ferg? You've spotted a bird. Oh, lovely, Fergus. There we go. Now, remember, this is an interactive safari, kids, so you can ask your teacher any question that you may have, and we'll try and answer as many as possible, so ask lots. Now, that bird that you just saw was called a Levalence cuckoo, and it's a very naughty bird because that bird parasitizes others. Now, when we say parasitizes, what that means is it basically harms other birds, and how it does that is it will go to their nests, it will kick their eggs out in some cases, so it takes the eggs out of the host bird and it will lay its own eggs there, and then it flies away and it leaves those birds to look after and incubate those eggs until they hatch and then feed those little chicks. Also, what they'll do is they'll lay eggs in the nest with the other eggs, and the eggs look exactly the same as those other birds' eggs, and then those other birds don't know any different, and when the little chick hatches it looks the same as its babies, and so the bond is created between that and the mother, and so then when it starts to change and it looks like a different bird, they don't get rid of it because they've already formed the bond and think that it's their own. So very naughty of those birds to do that, but very clever as well, because it means they don't actually have to worry about raising any chicks or building nests or expending any energy doing any of those things. Right, now I'm going to go along. I'm busy trying to see if I can find you a spotty cat, because we had a leopard this morning, so I'm trying to find her. And while I do that, back to Scott, who's managed to find an animal that I think our leopards would like to hunt, particularly the babies.
exactly. The leopards would certainly like to hunt these wildebeest, but what I would prefer is Tristan to continue his hunt for the leopards rather than the leopards hunting these young wildebeest, and that way you will get to see the beautiful spotted cats, and I'm feeling confident that Tristan will get lucky. I must apologize to the 3 schools that are joining us, the Brady Brown School, the Bartlett School, as well as Linville, and it's wonderful to have you guys with us on safari. Please send through as many questions as you can. We would love to help answer them, and it's always wonderful to chat with you guys. I wish that when I was at school I could join a live safari, but that wasn't an option back then. So we've just got a question through from Atiana. You would like to know if I've ever been chased before. Yes, I have, by a number of different animals: buffalo, rhino, elephant, and sometimes also the lions and the leopards can chase us. Usually though, the animals will run away from us because they're scared of us as humans and they don't want to fight with us, and you'll normally find that animals will only attack us if we overstay our welcome and if we do not listen to the clear indications that they don't want us to be there. It's kind of like a domestic dog. If it starts growling at you, you stop doing whatever you are and you give it some space. Maybe a domestic cat is the same thing, and us as humans are also similar. If somebody's in a bad mood, you can very often see it in the way that their body language is expressed. So the animals are the same. If an elephant shakes its head at us, we think, okay, it knows we're here, it doesn't want us to be here, so you slowly back out of the situation, and then most times the animals will not give us any trouble. When we tend to find the most issues is when the animals actually have young babies, and just like a lot of our parents would be very protective over us, so are the wild animals, and they feel threatened by us, and then sometimes attack us. But with the help of Herb, who you met earlier, the expert tracker, as well as my experience, we tend to avoid dangerous situations, and that's definitely not something that we want to put the animals into a state or a situation where they are feeling threatened by us. We just want to look at them, sneak up on them, have a quick look, and then move out. Hello Melanie, you've asked a very interesting question, and I'm glad you have, because I have actually been pooped on before, mainly by birds. I heard quite a funny sighting the other day. Actually, maybe I'll leave Tristan to tell it for you, because he told me the story and he'll be able to give you a better account of what happened. But basically, one of his guests was giving him a little bit of a hard time, and then an animal ended up pooping on the guest, which made Tristan very happy. But I'll leave him to tell you the full story. I've had a few birds poop on me, but nothing else other than that. The one poop you really do want to be careful of and avoid stepping in. Thankfully it's not going to fall on you because it will be from a lion or a leopard. Those are the smelliest poops in the bush, and if you're to drive over a lion or a leopard poop in your car, the rest of your drive is a nightmare because all of the poop gets stuck between the grip and the tires, and you cannot get that smell off unless you come in and wash it off very, very well, and it leaves you blocking your nose for the whole drive. It's not the only funny smell or situation that we don't want out here, Melanie. Some other situations where we get into smelly or possibly disgusting situations are if animals like lion kill a big prey animal like buffalo or giraffe. After a few days of lying out in the sun, because the lions can't eat it very quickly, it begins to really, really smell and be covered in maggots. So sometimes what you'll do is you'll break a certain kind of plant. I'll try and find one to show you earlier that smells like mint, and you plug your nostrils with those minty leaves, and that helps with the smell. Very good. I'm sure you guys are all looking forward to hearing Tristan's story about when an animal pooped on his guest. So why don't you go and hear exactly what happened. Oh no, Tristan's just gone into an area with no signal. This is a live safari, of course. In some areas there's no signal, so we're going to send you across to Noelle to see what her plans are for the afternoon.
Hello everyone, and welcome Grady Brown Elementary and Linville Adam Elementary. I hope you all are doing really well today. My name is Noelle, and on camera I have Senzo. There's Senzo's 3 fingers. So I'm busy driving to go see if I can find some lions. That is my plan for this afternoon. We tried to go to a leopard, but unfortunately we just could not see him in the thick bushes. It just wasn't working. So we'll try him a little bit later and see what happens. We actually have, oh my goodness gracious, we have about 100 impala. Let's have a look at them. So everyone, don't forget, we are live and we are interactive. So you can either send a question to your teachers or any other viewers. You can do hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or on the YouTube chat. Beautiful impala. Edwin, good question. Edwin, you're curious to know what it's like to work with the animals. Edwin, I love my job. I get to play outside all day, and I get to look at, oh, look, we even have wildebeest with babies in the background. Oh, so super cute. So we've got baby impala and baby wildebeest. Edwin, I'm a girl. You see, I love my job. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Sometimes it's a little bit frustrating, Edwin. Like just now, we can see where the leopard is, but we can't get any visual for you on the screen, so we kind of have to leave him and then go look for something else. But I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, and now we've got this beautiful view of impala and wildebeest, two of our antelope species. So it's pretty neat. And then sometimes, Edwin, they give us the slip, those cheeky lions. Noah, you're curious to know what type of animal wildebeest are. So Noah, the closest thing, Noah, I'm thinking maybe you guys are from the States, and there you have something called bison. So bison are similar to our buffalo, but I've seen a bison before, and when I look at wildebeest to me look like a little mini bison. So bison are an antelope species, and so are the wildebeest and the impala. So an antelope's kind of similar to a deer or an elk, but with deer and elk you get antlers that fall off every season, and with antelope species you get horns that grow once in a lifetime. So it's bone out of the skull, and then it's covered in material like your fingernail. Eliza, super cool question. Can a wildebeest adopt another animal's baby? Eliza, I've never heard of that happening. And look, just because I haven't seen it happen and just because I haven't read that it's happened doesn't mean that some freaky occurrence couldn't happen. But in general, no. They like their own babies and they stick with their own babies. Lions will sometimes suckle the cubs of other sister lions' cubs. But the wildebeest tend to stick to their own. Same with the impala. Can you hear them at all? I can hear them making noises. I just want to see if maybe you all can hear the same noises I can hear. Kamari, good question. How many babies can a wildebeest have? A wildebeest can have one baby. So wildebeest, impala, other antelope like kudu and nyala, they all have one baby. Giraffes, which are a really huge hooved animal, technically an antelope, but it's stretching it a bit, can sometimes have twins, but it's very rare. And then other animals, a zebra will only have one. A zebra is also hooved animal. Very difficult for animals that are eaten by other animals, so prey species. It's very difficult for them to have more than one baby. Aiden, good question. You want to know why are the impala hanging out with the wildebeest? Aiden, it has to do with the fact that it's the wildebeest hanging out with the impala. The wildebeest are not very smart. Their memories are very much like Dory from Finding Nemo. They forget things very easily, and impala are quite intelligent. So the wildebeest feel safer when they're with herds of impala as it's starting to get dark, and it's going to be dark here in about 2 hours. So then what happens is it's the more ears and the more sense of smell together in a group that helps them make it through the night, because at nighttime the wildebeest and the impala both cannot see. Their eyesight doesn't work at night, just like ours, but things like lion and leopard and cheetah and wild dog can see at night. So everything that eats them can see at night. So the more of them, the more chance that they'll survive. Mason also, yes, you guys have the best questions today. Mason, there could be 3 impala in a herd, or there can be 150 impala in a herd. It just depends. It's very variable. And sometimes the herd is lots of mamas and babies, and sometimes the herd is lots of males. The male herds are called bachelor groups, and then the herds with the females and the young are called breeding herds. Good questions. Keep them coming, guys. Keep them coming. I like them. Now, my question for you is, shall we stay with the impala and wildebeest for a little bit longer, or shall I keep looking for lions? Because I'm in the mood for lions. I don't know about you all. I think maybe let's do that. Maybe we find elephants along the way. All right, well, while I wait for your answers, my friend Scott is looking inside of a hole for some reason. Let's go to him.
Torch back. Hello everyone, I'm fishing for a spider, and it's a massive spider, what you guys in America would call a tarantula. Oh, it's taken the bait. You can see it's pulling the grass there. There's no bait on the end, and I'm just kind of tricking it into thinking that there's an insect. And we call these massive spiders baboon spiders. You guys would call them tarantulas in America. And I hope you're getting some good views. It's tricky business, and I'm told you are getting some fairly decent views of this big, beautiful spider. Cool. Now, I don't want to give it too much of a hard time. I just want to get it to a spot where we can see it. Diego, you would like to know if I've ever been bitten by one of these baboon spiders. No, I haven't. And I've been bitten by other smaller spiders, but thankfully the spiders don't give us too much of a hard time out here, and it's only if you actually roll over in your bed and kind of hurt one that I think they will bite you. So, like a lot of the wild animals out here, if you give them their space, they won't give you any trouble. It's the same with snakes. We sometimes get lucky and see snakes, not as often as we would like, because they usually slither off before we can actually find them. But just like the lions and the leopards and the elephants, if you respect them, usually they will respect you. And what you find is that usually people get bitten by snakes or spiders when they're actually handling them or trying to catch them, or even worse, sometimes trying to kill them. Now I know it's quite easy for us to, as humans, to possibly be scared of snakes or spiders or not like them, but it's important to remember that all the animals on the planet are here for a reason. So even though we may not like them, like some people may not like vegetables, that doesn't mean that they aren't important. And we must always remember that every little animal out here, even little flies and mosquitoes, play their part in the great ecosystem. It's not just the big animals that we need to keep these beautiful places as they are. Each little animal has their job to do. Now what we're planning on doing is spending a lot of time looking for little bugs in and around the bushes. These little bushes are a very specific kind of bush that praying mantids like to live on. We get some tiny little praying mantids, so I'm going to hopefully try and find you one of those. Very, very pretty little insects, as well as very, very good hunters. So it's not just the lion and leopard that can hunt, but a lot of the insects are very, very good at catching their prey. Very good. It sounds like Noel has got into a good spot with some playful wildebeest.
So, thanks, Scott. I do have very playful little wildebeest. It sounds as if everyone wants me to go towards the lions, and I'm definitely going to do that. You all can drive with me and watch what I do, but I'm sorry, these two wildebeest calves are super cute. Look at them. They're practicing for when they're older, and they don't even have horns yet. So these wildebeest babies, you can see the umbilical cord, everybody. These little wildebeest babies are only a couple of days old. And they were running around earlier just now, and look, that mom's pushing the other one away. She's like, stop picking on my child. They were chasing the impala around just now as well. It was very, very cute. Now mom's going to walk away, and that older one's going to come up and bump that one. Ooh, Katie, cool question. You want to know how many animal births have I seen and what kinds of animals? Katie, I've seen wildebeest giving birth. I've seen giraffe giving birth. I've seen wildebeest giving birth. But I think that's about it. I haven't seen lion or leopard give birth because they tend to give birth in secret. And elephants as well like to give birth in secret. I have a couple friends who have seen it, but I haven't seen it yet. So that would be super neat. I would love to see that. All right, so those wildebeest calves were very cute. Oh, something I would just like to tell you guys. So sometimes we talk about calves and sometimes we talk about lambs. So these wildebeest babies are calves, and then the impala babies are lambs. And that has to do with the size of the adults. So with the size of the impalas, they're little, so that the mum is a ewe and the male is a ram, and the baby would be a lamb. And then with the wildebeest are much bigger. So the mum is a cow and the male is a bull, and then the baby would be a calf, just for interest's sake. Brannigan, you're asking how big do the wildebeest get? So a wildebeest will weigh about 250 kilograms, so just over 500 pounds. And then I'm trying to think of the shoulder. Oh my goodness, these ones are just being so silly today. I'm trying to think of the shoulder height, and it's going to be maybe a couple of meters, so maybe about 5 foot. I'm 5'7", so yeah, up to my shoulder. Let's say about roughly 5 foot. Sorry, I'm trying to convert from, in South Africa, we do the metric system, and then where you guys are in the States, you do the imperial system. So I grew up learning the imperial system, and I didn't study math. You all must study math because it was very difficult for me. And now I've transferred over to the metric system, which I find easier because it's in tens. So in my head, I have to convert a little bit. It's not always precise, but it's getting there. Okay, enough of the cuteness. It's uber cute. But let's carry on and look for some lions. So, kiddos, tell me, what do you know about lions? Kimberly, good question. You're curious to know, when do wildebeest babies get their horns? You'll start seeing their horns properly after a few months, and then by the time they're a year old, oh, come on, Wendy, drive. They've got 2 little double horns like this, and then at 2 years they come out like this, and then so on until they curl around like that. Did you all also notice with those wildebeest that both the female and the male had horns, and with the impala, the females didn't have any horns, only the males have horns? That's also a difference between those two particular antelope species. And then the bison that you all get in the States, I believe, although I could be wrong on this, maybe one of you knows, I believe that both male and female with bison have horns as well. So Scott's in fine form today. First he was looking into a hole, and now apparently he's sitting on a tree stump. Maybe he's pretending to be a leopard. I don't know. Let's go have a look.
I'm not pretending to be a leopard just yet, but maybe a little bit later on I shall do that. This tree is not the ideal tree for a leopard to do its business on, but the tree behind me is a beautiful big marula tree, and you'll notice that once the main big branches start forking out to the side, they become very horizontal, and they're also quite thick branches, so lots of comfortable spots for a leopard to lie up, and the leopards are by far the best climbers of the big cats, so they can quite easily climb up trees, and sometimes they'll even be able to grab their kill, whatever it is, an impala, something often their same size as them, grab it by the neck, and then climb up a tree, put it over a branch, and that way no hyenas or other animals will be able to steal it from them very easily. Hello Mia, you're wondering if I ever get scared out here, and yes, it's always important to be cautious when out here, because even though the animals don't want to hurt us, if we do things wrong and if we are unlucky and scare an animal like a buffalo or an elephant, they could defend themselves and attack us, but 9 times out of 10 they won't. So as long as you just remember that there are risks and you take all the precautions, then nothing should happen. It's kind of like crossing a street, Mia. If you don't look left and don't look right before you cross the street, all of a sudden crossing a road becomes very, very dangerous. But if you take the basic precautions, look left, look right, and then cross, then it all of a sudden becomes safe. So a lot of these situations out here in the bush, you can equate to what the situations you guys deal with back home are like. Now, the tree behind me is not only a good tree for elephants to sleep in, for leopards to sleep in, but it's also one of the elephants' favorite food. They'll feed on the leaves of the tree, the bark of the tree, but their favorite food from this tree are the fruits. And this is the leftover nut from one of last year's fruits, I'm guessing. You can see that there's a little hole over there, and within that hole there's a very, very tasty nut, kind of like a macadamia nut, a very rich, tasty nut that lives in that hole. And usually both of these holes will be opened up, mainly by tree squirrels, to get to that nut. But this one hasn't been opened up yet, so I'm going to open it up for you and see what's inside. So there's a perfect little cap here. And as you see, it's easy to open now because it's an old nut. There we go. Doops. So once that pops out, the nut would ordinarily be waiting for you inside there, and they are very, very tasty and highly nutritious. But this one's probably been eaten by small bugs and insects because it has been lying on the ground for a long time. Now, before this fruit became old and probably eaten by elephants initially, it would have had probably been the size of a golf ball and had a big layer of flesh around it. And I can actually see some of the fruits in the tree up above us. It's going to be tricky for Dave to find one, but if he looks around enough he will. They're probably halfway to being ripe at the moment, so in about another month or so all of these fruits will start dropping from the trees, and what that means is that the elephants will be in a very, very good mood. And sometimes you get to actually see the herds running from tree to tree, trying to beat all of their herd members to get to all the fruits lying at the bottom, and then they gobble them up as quickly as they can. So that's something that I'm looking forward to in the next month or so once these fruits are ripe. We can also make some tasty marmalades and jam. Oh, I dropped my flashlight. Some tasty marmalades and jam out of the fruits, and for those who like beer, you can make a local beer out of the fruits, and that's what the local people from this area do. Danielle, yes, people can definitely eat these nuts. It's not just for the squirrels and other animals, but we can eat them. The problem is I think because they're quite small and because these nuts are very hard to break into, they haven't been sold in shops and been commercialized just yet. But in certain shops in this general area, this is the home of the marula tree, the area that we are in and the area that they grow best, sometimes you can actually buy these little nuts and they are absolutely delicious. But like I said earlier, when I popped that cap off now, it was very easy. Usually when the nuts is more fresh, it's very, very difficult to pop that cap out and get to the nuts. Hello, Mrs. Harper. You would like to know if leopards hunt from up in trees because they're not as fast as the other cats. And no, that's not the case. They're not as fast as cheetah. And with their stealth, they can get very, very close to their prey. To give you an idea, if this was an impala and I was a leopard, I would have to be no further than this before I pounced. Anything further than this is too far because their prey are very quick. Animals like lion, because there's a number of them, they can encircle their prey and don't have to be as close. And animals like cheetah, because they are the fastest mammals on the planet, they can catch up to their prey. Having said that, what's interesting is sometimes leopards will actually hunt from trees, but it's more through default than anything else, Miss Harper. They'll be sleeping up in a tree, and then maybe some inyala will come in to feed on the marula fruits that have fallen from it, and the leopard will be lying up there with some food right below it, and it just jumps straight down from the tree onto their prey. And there have been some incredible, incredible scenes captured. I've never seen it happen, of leopards doing just that. I saw one scene, I can't remember what country it was filmed in, I think it could have been Botswana, but the leopard must have been about 8 or 9 meters up in a high, high tree, and it literally jumped head first straight out of this tree. Now, to give you an idea, that's 4 regular sized doors up that this leopard came flying out of the tree straight down onto an impala. So they do it from time to time, but like I said, it's more through default than anything else. They'd have to wait very, very long in a tree for their prey to come to them if they were to have any luck. Now, we've moved out of that big open clearing. We're moving into a bit of a thicker area, and like I said earlier, we don't want to scare any animals or surprise them by our presence. So I've got this bag, well, it's a sock actually, that's filled with ash from the campfire. And as I do this, you can see that the ash comes out and gives us an idea of where the wind's blowing. At the moment it's kind of swirling all around us, which means we have to be very, very cautious so that animals can't smell us before we actually see them. So I'll keep testing the wind as we go. It seems to be predominantly coming into us, which means any animals ahead of us shouldn't know that we're coming. Hello, William, you'd like to know what is the most dangerous animal we get here? And it's a tricky one to answer. For me, I would say in general the herbivores are more actually dangerous than the predators. Animals like elephants, hippopotamus, and the Cape buffalo are the three, I think, most dangerous animals to encounter on foot, and any given one of them could be more dangerous than the other depending on the day. I guess it's kind of like William saying, you know, which of your friends is the most dangerous? All of them are different, even though we are all humans. Some people may be less angry than others, or some people may not be as dangerous. So just like we have our own personalities, so do wild animals. But interestingly, it's mainly the herbivores that are dangerous to us on foot, not so much the big cats, which is what everyone kind of tends to think. But they don't want to hunt us, they don't want to eat us. Sounds like Noelle is trying her best to find you some predators, so why don't you guys jump on her vehicle and give her a hand? Hopefully maybe one of you will spot it before she does.
But I also have Senzo with me, and Senzo has some crack in eyesight, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to place. Very blustery. It wants to rain just now. My hat keeps flying off, so I'm going to have to drive like this. I need to check the road every now and then, so excuse the back head. Human, they don't us. They don't know us. They don't know that we're. They. If they've never eaten a human, they don't know that everything they eat has 4 legs. We also like their vision. Oh, sorry, I gotta go back to Scott. I've got some. Sorry.
Hello, shame it sounds like the signal on Noelle and Tristan's vehicle is a little bit shaky today, but thankfully we've got some technical geniuses that will hopefully fix the problem sooner rather than later. And you've come back to us at a good time, because we've come upon an old graveyard, and it looks like the scene of where a male impala has died. His horns have broken apart, and what I'm hoping to show you is exactly how horns are different to antlers. Now, the horns would have been kind of something like that on the head of the impala. How do I look?
Great.
Could I be an impala, maybe? So what's interesting here, and for a lot of you guys in America, you guys will have deer, and deer don't have horns, they have antlers, and there's quite a big difference between a horn and an antler. Antlers fall off every year and regrow very, very quickly when it comes for the rutting season, and it's got a velvety kind of covering around it, so a softer kind of covering. Here in Africa, all of our antelope have got horns. We don't have any animals with antlers. And here you can see that the inner of the horn is bone, and this grows throughout the life of the impala or the antelope, and it's got a very thin sheath of keratin. So this is the same material that makes up our fingernails or our hair, and it's just a very, very thin sheath that creates that brown coloration on the outside of this bony inner. So interesting difference there. Now, there's a few animals that are making sure that nothing goes to waste out here, and namely, there are some horn borer moth, and it's a very, very specifically modified moth that's created these little tubes or cases as they fed on this keratin sheath. Keratin, our fingernails and hair, is very, very difficult to digest, but these very specialized moths can do just that. Not only that, there's a few termites. I can see one here. Tiny little termite that's using this as its home. They're not actually feeding so much on any parts of the horn or bone, but I think they've just decided that it was a good place for them to live. So termites are also very important, also very specialized in what they can do and what they can feed on, and they are the #1 recyclers of all vegetable matter. All the old dead plants and branches and dead grass that none of the other animals want to eat are what the termites gobble up, and by them gobbling it up, they recycle all of those nutrients that would otherwise lie in waste and possibly become a big hazard for fires if there's just dead, dry bushes everywhere. So they do a very, very good job of recycling everything. So now I just want to put everything back just the way I found it. so that we don't interrupt Mother Nature's plans too much. Oh, here's another little piece of the keratin sheath that you can see the bony inner would have come around. Cool. Nyla, you would like to know if there's anything that we could use these impala horns for, and I guess maybe some decorations in one's home, but usually we don't like to pick up anything and move anything out of the bush, because like I said, there are animals that need those things to survive. The horn borer moth that eats that keratin sheath wouldn't have any food if we kept taking all the horns out of the bush. So generally, when you are in a wildlife reserve or wildlife area, it's best to just come in, look, observe, and not necessarily take anything with you other than memories. So that's the rule we try to stick by when going about our adventures. Imagine if somebody had taken those horns, we wouldn't have actually been able to see them. Hello Dion, you'd like to know if it's hard to find animals here. And yes, sometimes it is. It all depends on what you're looking for. And if you are happy to look at all of the different animals, then you'll definitely always be able to find something. Some birds or some antelope. Usually the animals like leopard and lion can be a little bit more tricky to find. And animals like insects, there's so many of them, and I found one over here. Maybe if you come around this other side here, Dave, there's an awesome little grasshopper that I just saw move ever so slightly, and you guys are going to get some great views of it.
Is it the base?
Oh, no, it's just on the side, yeah.
I've got it.
It's so well camouflaged that Dave battled to even see it, and this is a good example. If you just move slowly, even in your own backyard, there's so many interesting little critters and creatures that are going about their lives, just like this little grasshopper. Hello. I like your little orange antenna. It seems a bit short. There's one broken off. Hard to tell. Look at that big eye of his, keeping an eye on us. And what a cool view of one of the tiny, tiny critters. It's probably only the size of my fingernail. Nadia, you would like to know what happens once the sun goes down. Are there animals that like to move around after dark? And yes, there certainly are. There's some animals that are almost strictly nocturnal and will only move around under the cover of darkness. And then others like the lion and the leopard who like to hunt after dark, because that's when they have the best advantage over their prey. Their eyesight is very good in the dark. Most of the predators can't see very well in color, but that means they can see well in black and white after dark, whereas the prey animals have got a better ability to see in color, but then can't see as well after dark. So you get a whole bunch of animals like porcupine, Africa's largest rodents. They like to come out after dark. The aardvark, a pig-like animal that likes to dig up the termite mounds and ants' nests and use a long thin tongue to gobble them up. So there's a few examples of the more nocturnal animals. Some will do a bit of both, but it's definitely fair to say that once the sun sets, a whole host of different animals come out and start doing their thing. Jason, you'd like to know how we go about following animals and following the predators after dark. And with the way technology is developing, we're getting very, very lucky, because there's some incredible technology, thermal imaging, so it just picks up any animals that are hot. So you'll just see the outline of their body because of their temperature. So you use thermal cameras sometimes, as well as infrared cameras. Now, an infrared light is a light that our eyes cannot pick up, but the special infrared cameras can. So essentially we can go about viewing a lot of the nocturnal animals without actually having to shine any spotlights. People still do use spotlights, and it's still important to use spotlights to be able to show people animals like lions and leopards and all the other nocturnal interesting animals after dark. But it means that we are interfering a little bit, because if we shine the spotlights on a leopard, obviously the impala will be able to see it. If we shine the spotlights on the impala, then it means they'll be blinded and the leopard will be able to creep up to them easily, and we don't want that. We don't want to disadvantage any animals and have too much of an impact on things. One thing quickly before we send you off: found some poop here, and don't be fooled, it may look clean and white, but it's not. It's the poop of a hyena. And let me get the stick here, sorry. And hyenas are the bone crunchers of the African wilderness. They've got very, very powerful jaws, and not only that, they've got very, very powerful digestive juices. So all the bones that they eat get completely dissolved up. Look at that. As I break it up, you don't see any little bits of bone, and this is a telltale sign of some hyena poop. Hopefully we'll be able to find you some hyena today, but if not, hopefully some other predators will be about. In the meantime, we'll send you back to Noel to see how the afternoon's coming along. Maybe not. Sounds like her signal's just dropped again. So you're stuck with me for a little bit longer. I can show you an interesting little thorn bush here. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have got big thorns in your hometown, but look at this for a thorny tree. Let me see if I can break off this thorn here. Look at how long they are. It's as long as my finger. Thankfully, this acacia tree, the thorns aren't very strong and they're quite brittle. As you can see, I could break it quite easily there. So of course, yes, if you stood on it with a pair of flip-flops, it would go straight through and it would give you a bit of a nasty spike. But it's probably not going to give our vehicles punctures when we are off-roading, following the big cats as they go about their business. But what's interesting is there are a few other bushes with maybe not as long a thorn and more of a spine that give us flat tires, and one actually managed to puncture through these big boots of mine the other day, and they gave me a puncture, and this rubber is really hard, so it gives you an idea of how hard some of the bushes can be here with their thorns. Those make really good toothpicks. Often on safari, you stop in the evening for a sundowner snack with your guests, and if you forget any toothpicks to have any of the little cocktail snacks, you can always just get a few of those thorns. So I've used that trick a few times when we forgot bits of our picnic. Martha, you'd like to know if I ever get bored of my job? And not really, no. We're very, very lucky with what we do. It's always wonderful to have so many people with us on safari. There's no other place in the world where so many people join any one guide on safari at any given point. So I think it's wonderful that we are taking you guys on the biggest safari the world has ever seen. And it keeps us excited, entertained, all the questions you guys send through, and the fact that just around this next corner we could bump into some elephants, some leopard, some lion, who knows? And that always keeps me exciting. We simply never know what is going to happen and when. Speaking of which, hopefully this time you will be able to go to Noel without any signal issues. So why don't you go and try and see if you can give her a hand with whatever she's up to.
Sorry about all the technical difficulties, everybody. Unfortunately, it looks as if our lions have moved into an area that I cannot get into. I could hear a bunch of francolins, which are like little partridges, little birds, alarm calling inside of a drainage line, but my gremlins are too thick today, maybe a little bit later. I have a feeling it's this creepy weather that's pulled through. It's super cold and windy, so I'm heading towards Chitwa Dam, and hopefully I will find a little leopard. Sorry, Curse, Danielle was asking about... Danielle, good question. You're asking, how do we tell animal tracks apart from one another? It's very similar to us. If you look at your hand, everyone's hand size is different, as well as you've got different sort of wrinkles. Your little fingerprints are different, so that's one of the ways you tell them apart. So an impala has hooves. It has a split hoof, and it's a certain size, and a wildebeest is a much more boxy shape, and it's larger. And then lion has 4 toes and three lobes at the back. I'll try and see if I can find you some tracks that you know what I'm talking about while we're doing this. And a leopard's very similar but much smaller. A cheetah is also similar, but it's a little bit longer and it shows the claws. Hyena only has 2 lobes and shows the claws. So there's all these little differences, just like our individual hands ourselves. It's a good question. We had some rain, and then it got very, very hot. So a lot of the tracks that I was hoping to show you have not showed up on the ground. But if I find you some, I'll definitely show them to you. Now we're coming up to the dam, and there's some impala, which we talked about earlier. Jason, good question you're asking. Does it rain a lot? So Jason, in our summertime, it's summer for us now, we get rain. We get about 600 mils of rain, which I think is... Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We're going to ask, you can Google it, or maybe your teacher will know. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to do mils to inches, millimeters. So we get quite a bit, of rain in the summer. Not a huge amount, but enough, because it's South Africa, especially where we are, is more arid. It's a little bit drier. And there's other parts of South Africa that get much more rain. There's other parts of Africa that get much more rain as well. And then it rains every sort of couple of days here in general, if everything's going according to plan. All right, so here we are at the dam, just coming around the corner. And I'm having a look for any predators that might be lying nearby, and for maybe some hippos that might be here. I'm just going to come to where we normally see some hippos and see if I can show you one of those quickly. Here we go. You can see some hippos right through there. So hippos are a big mammal that live in the water, very similar to a manatee or to a dugong. And they're also related to whales. Whales and hippos are in the order Whippomorphia, they're cousins. There we go. Especially adapted, they can hold their breath for about 10 minutes. All right, kiddos, thanks for joining. Wonderful questions today. You definitely have to come and join us again. That would be great. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry, no cats, but next time. Maybe next time. Thanks so much. All right. Hello, everyone else. Welcome back. Well, I'm saying welcome back, but you haven't really gone anywhere. We're still here. It's very cold and very windy, and the gremlins are really hitting me hard today. We have Tingana, who's lying inside of a drainage line, still with his injured paw. I saw him this morning for quite a while, and he's moved a little bit, but it's a bit swollen, and I think he's just resting. And then the two of the Burmese were seen this morning as well, but when I went into that area, they've gone into this thick drainage line as well that I just can't get into. And also the gremlins keep attacking me every time I try, so unfortunately, but it's cold and windy weather, and as we know with cold and windy weather, the cats start to move a little bit earlier, as opposed to sort of yesterday afternoon that was really hot. Pretty sure that was yesterday afternoon. All the days are blending together at the moment. Sorry. Okay, so sometimes when I'm talking to you guys, Kirsty's in my ear, and every now and then when I pause, take a breath, and think about what I want to say, Kirsty's in my ear again with something else, just telling me what's going on and giving you questions, and so relating information back, and then also telling me what is Scott seen and what is Tristan seen. So apparently my friend Tristan, who left the same time as I am, is no longer mobile. He's being towed back to camp. Something's happened with Rusty, and I'm sorry, Tristan. I'm a horrible person. If someone falls over, I laugh. I don't mean to. It's just a really bad reaction. So hopefully Tristan will sort out what he needs to sort out, and then come back to us. Shame, man. That's very unfortunate. Okay, so everybody, what are we going to do today? What would we like to try and see? What would we like to try and find? I'm sitting here at Chitwa Dam with my rain covers on because it looks like it's going to rain, so you will see a pole every now and then. And I'm seeing lots of impala. I'm seeing a wildebeest. I'm seeing a couple of waterbuck in the distance there. The hippos are not really playing along because it's too windy. We're just getting little noses above the water. But there's probably 200 impala here in general. Lots of little babies. Tons of little babies. Those wildebeest babies earlier were super cute. I think what we might do is we might have a look around the backside of Chitwa Dam and see if Hassan has popped up. This morning, Tristan had quite a nice sighting with Tundi, but she's moved away, and I think that's what he was doing before he broke down, unfortunately. And so I'll ask and see if there's any updates with that. Now, while I'm busy debating about what we're going to do and where we're going to go, let's head back to Scott, who I didn't quite get what he's up to, but he's on his own 2 feet in the bush, so I'm sure it's something fun.
Yes, sometimes it is difficult to decide what to do, but I'm sure Noel is going to come up with a good plan. Now, I've found the sickle bush, the tree responsible for giving me a puncture a few days ago, and I'd just like to show you what I mean about these spines. They're not as clearly evident as the big white thorns of that acacia tree we were looking at earlier, but these are the ones that are really, really strong. I mean, this one's a bit long, so it's not too strong, but this one underneath here, it's short, it's sharp, and it's very, very hard wood. It's very hard to bend and break, and these bushes also give our cars the most punctures out of all. So a good example of, if you know which bushes are around the area that you are driving off-road, you will limit your chances of getting a puncture. And there's nothing worse than getting a puncture. Often it can be at the worst timing as you're about to arrive at some lions roaring. All the air goes out, and then you have to stop, change the tire, and miss out on the action. Robert, you have noticed that I'm wearing some form of protection around my legs here, and this is to protect my socks. These are called gaiters, and if you didn't wear these, there's lots of little burrs and sticky seeds that will get stuck to your socks and that will irritate you. So that is why I'm wearing these little gaiters, to keep my socks free of burrs and sticky seeds. And you wondering why I'm not worried about snakes or spiders biting, or possibly even those parasites called ticks. And snakes and spiders are unlikely to bite us unless, of course, you step on them or aggravate them. The ticks, however, are a bit different. They can pop on as we're walking through the long grass. They often sit and stand on the edge of blades of grass and then latch onto you as you move past, just like they latch onto all the different herbivores. And I'm sure we'll actually be able to find you some ticks in this area. There's some very big ticks called rhino ticks that specialize on latching onto the rhinos, and I'm confident we'll be able to find you some of those. But as long as you kind of watch where you're going, you probably aren't going to come into any trouble. So that's why I'm wearing shorts. It also is quite a warm area that we're working in here. Ordinarily, if the sun was shining, I would be sweating right now. It gets very, very hot and humid in this part of South Africa. And even though it's cloudy today, it's definitely not cold. So if I was to be wearing longs, it would be unpleasantly hot. Now, let's come and look here for some ticks. They like long blades of grass. Not like the one I showed you a bit earlier. That was a bit too short. It's not a tick, but we found a spider. Look at that. How cool. And it looks like she's on her nest of little eggs that she would have wrapped up in that little white fluffy material. And looks like she's taking a good job in making sure that those eggs are protected and that nothing comes and gobbles them up. Well done, Mommy Spider. She's got beautiful colorations and markings. As I bend this little blade of grass down, you'll see. Good. Debbie in Vancouver, you'd like to know a little bit more about the unknown leopard that we saw this morning. And to be honest, we don't really know too much about him, and I'm hoping Tristan, who's got the most experience of leopards in this area, will be able to work out who he was. He was quite relaxed. We found him on foot, and initially we thought he was Hosanna, a young male that the guys have spent a lot of time with here in the last 2 years that he's been alive, and he's very, very relaxed with us on foot. So when we first found him, he just moved off the termite mound and lay about 20 meters from us. So we incorrectly just assumed that it was our friend Hosanna, but it wasn't, and we are not too sure who he is, where he's come from, but hopefully we will be able to work out exactly where he is. I'm confident we will. A lot of you guys may also be able to help us in his identification. We just need to show you guys some pictures of him. He was a young male, not too sure how old exactly. We didn't get the best views. Tristan would have got better views in the vehicle when he came in and established the sighting after us. So, I'm going to continue to search for the rhino ticks. I know they like this pathway. I've seen quite a few of them on it before. And while I search for those little bloodsuckers, we'll be sending you back to Noelle. Hopefully she would have made up her mind as to what she wants to do for the rest of the afternoon.
Scott, I have not indeed made up my mind, and I usually just go with the flow, but I'm having a major blockage with the flow today, but that's okay. We've got wonderful antelope species and a really beautiful example of a male waterbuck. I always find a male waterbuck to be quite handsome. This one in particular has a very large, widespread horns, and he's just very handsome. Now, Tesla, sweetie, I believe you are watching today, and I hope you're feeling a bit better, and I was wondering if you would mind sending through your 12 Days of Christmas remake that you did with your mum. So if you want to send that through, and then I would wonder if there's maybe waterbuck in it, maybe impala, although I have a feeling, Tesla, that you've probably put in lions and leopards and elephants. That would be my guess. Again, guys, sorry for the poll. It is looking terrain, so we're just trying to keep our equipment safe by having our little roof on, so they will pop into the screen every now and then. Now, all of these antelope species are making their way towards the water, the impala in particular. And for a while, they were running and jumping on their way. Oh, really, sir? That's rather rude. Yeah, we'll go to the baby impala. It's much cuter than what the waterbuck was doing. They were running and jumping on their way down. That has a lot to do with this windy weather that's picked up. Remember, when it's windy like this, it takes away their ability to smell and hear properly, and they really don't trust their eyesight. And also, it's going to be dark relatively soon, so they're starting to get a little bit nervous. We've got a female waterbuck. Ooh, Jilly, super interesting question. Have there been any negative impacts? Oh, check that. Male's checking to see if that female's in estrus, if she's in heat. Watch, he's going to lick her urine, and then he's doing a phlegm grimace. You see that? He's testing her pheromones to see if she's ready to mate. Very cool. He's going to do it again. Absolutely fantastic. Really incredible social behavior to witness. So all of those pheromones that are in there are getting processed inside his organs of Jacobson. We humans don't have that organ, but we do process. Look at that phlegm grimace, so wonderful. We do process pheromones in our own way. So when you find someone else attractive, it has a lot to do with their smell, which has a lot to do with pheromones. Oh, look, now he's nudging her. He wants to get a little lovin', putting his head on her rump. And sort of, he'll touch her with his leg every now and then. And if she doesn't really move away, oh look, and now he's giving her a little cuddle, a little nudge, saying I love you. And if she doesn't move away quickly, he will try and mount her. There, see her nudge? There he nudges. Now he's lining himself up. He's checking to make sure there's no other males around. She's moving, but she's not moving away quickly. And she did urinate for him quite readily and frequently, so I think it's possible that she is in the mood. Again, resting his head on her rump. So we've seen lots of births this week with all the wildebeest births. So maybe it's fitting to see the beginning part of it as well with the antelope species. She's keeping her tail erect, so to me she's looking very receptive. Now he touches her again with his leg. It's a slow dance, a very slow dance. And he obviously doesn't want to force himself upon her. He wants to make sure that whatever energy he's putting into this, she's receptive as well, or else it's just a waste of energy and time. Okay, so while we're waiting to see if this male waterbuck manages to get to where he wants to go, Julie, you were wondering, have there been, since Kruger National Park opened up on the northern end to Zimbabwe, have there been any negative impacts over the years? So just to give everyone, I don't have any maps with me, I'm so sorry, but just to give everyone a sort of idea of how we're situated. So we are inside the Sabi Sands, which is concessions that are tied together on the southwestern side of Kruger National Park. We're not inside of Kruger National Park. We are open to Kruger National Park. We're in the greater Kruger area. And then Kruger goes the whole eastern boundary of South Africa with Mozambique, and then is open to Zim and Mozambique on the top there. So basically what Julie's asking is, there was a transfrontier park that was opened up to allow free movement of animals back and forth, and how is that affected? So something that's interesting, when they dropped those fences there, I think maybe did he stop? Oh, there's warthogs. Maybe let's watch the warthogs while I'm busy telling everybody about this, so you can watch the beautiful wildlife instead of looking at my face. And they're moving as well, which is quite nice. So when those fences were dropped, what ended up happening was there was the thought that animals would just automatically move over, and it didn't really happen that way. So they translocated a whole bunch of elephants, and then those elephants were like, well, we don't want to be here, and they just moved back to where they were. So slowly over the years, there has been some nice movement, and that's worked out well. I'm thinking sort of from negative impacts is really hard with the transfrontier parks, because South Africa has its own regulations when it comes to wildlife, and Zimbabwe has their own regulations, and Mozambique has their own regulations. So our conservation is different from their conservation, and so that can sometimes cause problems. Also, Zimbabwe has gone through a lot of political strife, as has Mozambique. So there's been a lot of influx of people from both countries, a lot through the park. So that's been quite difficult as well. But yeah, I think it's been about a 50-50 split, Julie. We could talk about this the whole game drive. And it is a really great question, and is a really in-depth scenario to discuss. But I think just sort of overall in a roundabout ball, it's been good, and it is good, but it's also, there's still not enough space. There's still too much fragmentation. There's still too many humans around, and the wildlife needs more space to be in. And with the political things that are happening in Zimbabwe and Mozambique, and also you could say a little bit in South Africa, has led a lot to influences from outside countries, specifically overseas countries, coming in, and that's been an uprise in poaching. So that's an issue as well. And then in the northern part of Kruger, there's not a lot of rhinos up there, so the poachers that are coming in that aren't getting rhinos, they're trying to take out elephants on the way out, and that's been a trend in the past couple of years. So that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with dropping fences or opening fences, because they'll still get over the fences, the poachers. Yeah, so 50-50, Julie. Let's go 50-50. All right. Tula Ann, I haven't heard you in forever. I'm so happy to get a question from you. And your question is, do baby impalas ever fall over when they run and jump like that? Tula Ann, I've never seen them fall over when they run around and jump like that. I have seen one sort of get in a hole and then not break its leg, and that's been an issue. But in general, no, they do fine. They're okay. They're sprightly. They're meant to jump around. All right, I think we've used up Chitwa Dam as best as we possibly can, and we've had really great questions, everybody. Keep them coming. I think we're going to go search around Chitwa a little bit more, and while we're doing that, let's head back to Scott, who has a spider.
We certainly do, and I've been searching day in and day out for a clever spider like this little crab spider, who very cleverly positions itself right below some flowers, which are obviously going to attract insects, and as soon as any insect lands on that flower, that spider is ready and poised to pounce. What an awesome, awesome view of an incredible little spider. I've never seen a crab spider like this before, but Herbie, who has spent a lot of time on foot in this area, says he's noticed that they do like to spend a lot of time on these Welfaria bushes, and he says especially in the winter time, which I find quite interesting. So a good example of an ambush predator doing what it does best, waiting patiently for its food to come to it. Now, we've got another very interesting scene over here, and it's going to be a little bit of a tracking quiz. And what I'd like to do is show you guys a few stones on the leaf of this Welfaria indica. Who would have put those stones here. I've also noticed a branch over here. Who would have put this little branch over there? So that's a little quiz. Who is responsible for putting that branch and those stones onto the leaves of this bush? What I want to do is give you a bit of a wider view of the scene. Now, when tracking, it's good to have an idea of the general area, not just the individual track or sign that you've noticed. So this is the general area. You can see a bit of a pathway coming through here, a natural game trail. So yes, please let us know who was responsible for that. Interesting one, isn't it? I'm sure a lot of you are scratching your heads. I was also scratching my head, and to be honest, if it wasn't for Herbie's wizardry, it would have taken me a while to work out what happened there. Herbie came to the rescue and told me exactly what it was that put that stone up on the leaf. This is a road that we call Ingwe Alley. When I first arrived here 3 years ago, there was 2 young leopards called Kunyuma and Quarantine, 2 brothers that used to spend a lot of time in and along a riverbed that flows just to the right of us. And actually there wasn't a road here, and we actually kind of made it because we spent so much time looking for them and finding them here. Oh, Herbie's found something. He just gave a little whistle there, just to let us know that he has found something. Hello, Mystics. You've made a guess as to who put the stone on the leaf. You said monkeys. No. Thank you, though, for making a guess. And you guys are all going to laugh when you hear exactly... You guys are all going to laugh when you find out exactly what it is. What have you found here, Herb? Ah, thanks. Well done. Now, I've been searching for these tiny little flower mantis for the last few days, but haven't seen any, but Herbie's managed to find one. Ah, here it is. Now, we don't want to bother it too much, so I'm just going to bend this leaf over there. There we go. Now we'll get some good views. They are tiny little mantids. And they're called flower mantids because of their colorations and markings. They kind of blend in and look a little bit like a flower. You get lots of different types of flower mantids. And just like that crab spider we saw earlier, they too cleverly wait on these Waltheria plants, which are flowering at the moment and therefore are going to attract a host of little prey insects that this chrysalis... Oh! Did you see that massive jump? How cool was that? And they only really use their back 4 legs for movement and walking around and jumping, and their front 2 legs are specialized for hunting. So they've got tiny little spines that help to latch onto their prey when it's time to catch them. Good. Thank you, little flower mantid, and thanks to Herbie. Kathleen, you've said a squirrel, and the clue I'm going to give you is you guys need to think a little bit bigger than monkeys and squirrels. Both of those are wrong, and I actually don't want to go too far away. I think I actually might... Ginger, you said James did it. He's a trickster and a joker, but he cannot claim responsibility for that. The animal that probably can claim responsibility for doing it is the same animal that did this. Rocky, you got it. Well done. It's elephants. And just like the elephants walking past this tree after having a mud wallow and leaving their mud behind on the leaves, what happened here, and you guys are all going to laugh and possibly give yourselves a little kick in the bottom for not thinking about it, but it's so often the case with tracks. It's so simple once you've been told, but until such point in time that somebody's told you what caused the track, it becomes difficult. Now, we are back at the scene of the stones on the leaf, and you could imagine a big elephant walking along and then boink, stepping, crushing the stones into the leaf, and then continuing off, and that's what gets left behind. So that is the doing of the foot of an elephant crushing this plant down as they were walking through the bush. Cool. Like I say, once it's been explained and pointed out to you, tracking often becomes so simple, and you're often like, how did I not think of that? But there's lots of interesting little things that happen out here. Another common one, I remember when I was first doing my tracking tests as a beginner, is something like, this isn't a very good example, but something like a blade of grass blowing on the road like this will create an area where it looks like it's been swept, then it stops being windy and it goes back up, and you come past and you're like, who swept the floor? And it was just the grass in the wind. So there's another example of how you can kind of be caught out and surprised by some interesting tracks. Very good. We are going to keep perusing down Ingwe Alley. Hopefully there is an Ingwe waiting for us, and Ingwe being a leopard, who knows, that young male leopard that we saw this morning wasn't too far from here. It would be incredible if we find him again. But for now, we're going to send you back to Noel.
So we have pottered away from Chitwa Dam, and we're just slowly driving around. I want to see if Hasana's around like we talked about earlier. I haven't seen him in a few days since we had him after the other morning when it was raining. And later in that day he was seen with Kachava, and then when I went to go try and find them, I couldn't find them. I have a feeling that they both went in towards very close to Chitwa Dam, to Chitwa Lodge, and then they moved into, well, at least Hasana moved into Little Gowrie, and so I'm hoping that he wants to pop up somewhere around here today, or maybe even Kachava herself, because I haven't seen her in quite a while. It would be nice to see her. I'm trying to think of what other updates that I have. Oh, the Nkuhumas went back over to Simumbili, and the Sticks went back into Little Gowrie. And other than that, I haven't heard anything on quarantine lately. And I haven't heard anything on Shadow and her youngster lately. So last time Shadow was seen was also on Little Gowrie. I have a feeling that her and her little one are over that side. I'm hoping she pops up for tomorrow morning because we haven't seen her in a while. It would be nice to see her. And I'm also curious about this young male that was seen this morning, who he might be. Oh, Adele, good question. You're asking where Tumba is. Adele, the last update that I got on Tumba was also that he was around Little Gowrie side, but I have not had sorry, it's going to be a little bit bumpy. I have not had as many updates about him as I would like, and I actually haven't seen Tumba yet. I would love to see Tumba. I've seen everybody else except for Tumba. Well, I haven't seen Anderson Mail, but Anderson Mail I think is down by Londolozi or something like that. So yeah, that would be a good one. And then Mvula, we haven't seen Mvula in a while. I haven't seen Mvula since our whole wild dog crazy chasing scenario. So I love him. So I got a question the other day after Game Drive about how do I know Mvula, since I just started working with Safari Live. So I used to freelance in this area many years ago, and then I also have come to a couple of places here as a guest because they were sister lodges of other lodges that I worked at. So that's how I know Mvula. I know Mvula seen him on and off now for about 7 years. And then for other leopards that you all would remember that are no longer with us, I remember Karula very well. I did some game drives freelancing and got to see Karula really nicely. And I also remember, sorry about that, Mafufignon quite well. I'm not sure. Mafufi's used to be on Chitwa quite a bit in the nets. I'm not sure if he made it up to Gowrie. I would assume that he would. I'm pretty sure that many of you might know him. He was a beautiful, beautiful male. I enjoyed him very much. And then other than that, most of the leopards that I know are farther north from us here. Marissa, you're curious to know, do the animals when they're injured seek humans for help? And you're asking because why would Hasana lie close to the road near camp? So Marissa, Hasana's lying close to the road. Sorry, not Hasana, Tingana. Excuse me, I've done that like 3 times today. I've got Hasana on the brain. Tingana's not lying near the road close to camp because it's close to camp. He's lying there because it's part of his core territory, and that's where he feels comfortable. So it's not the fact that there's humans in that camp, it's just that's his space. So he could care less that we're there. We're actually in his space. He's not coming into ours. And no, I don't think that the animals seek out human attention for help. And I don't think, like, his paw's injured. He has some injuries, but he's a wild animal. He'll take care of himself. He's not coming to us to say, look, I've got an injury. But Mariska, I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to interject it with a story from an old boss of mine, because there are circumstances where it can sometimes be a bit different. Not with cats and things, but this story is with an elephant. There was an elephant, she's still around, and she was part of some of the original research that was done in the greater Kruger area on contraceptives and movements between summer feeding and winter feeding. And so they had a collar on her that had a GPS tracker so they could chart all this stuff, etc. So by the time they wanted to take the collar off, she had just given birth to a little one, so they decided to wait because they didn't want to bother her too much. And then a few years after that, my old boss was on drive, and she came up close to the car and she was tummy rumbling at him, and he's looking at her like, okay, and now? And she kept tummy rumbling. He's like, okay, and now? And then she got down on her arms, sort of on her elbows and wrists like that in front, and lifted her ear, and the collar was cutting into her skin a little bit. So they called the vet, and the vet came and took it off. So 99.9% of the time, animals don't want anything really to do with us. They see us as part of their environment, but you will find every now and then a very special story like that. And that particular elephant and my old boss, he had worked on that property for so long. By that point, they I want to say knew each other, but I'm going to say those words, knew each other, and just remember, the way that we have emotions, the way animals have emotions are very different. So it's not that, they had a relationship, but there was definitely a connection there, if that makes sense. So there's no black and white, but in general, Tingana is not going to come to us for help, but you have a story like I just told you there that, there's special circumstances, mitigating circumstances, as it were. So it's an interesting thought. It's a good question. All right, now Scott is busy walking about still, and before the heavens open on us, I think let's head back to him and see what he has to say.
I hope the heavens don't open on us. It was looking a lot gloomier earlier when we headed out, so I'm confident that hopefully we will be able to survive the drive rain-free. I would hate to have to do the big TV show that we are doing tomorrow for Big Cat Week with wet, soggy boots, so let's hope we stay dry for that reason. I'm still continuing just to scour the earth for some of the smaller critters. There's so many interesting little things that are so easily overlooked, and to be honest, a lot of the time we are looking for the big cats and big animals like elephants, the exciting stuff, which means we tend to kind of overlook the smaller things. Scarlett, you would like to know what is the most exciting situation that's ever happened with me on foot, and probably the most... Was it elephant? Was it leopard? Was it lion? There's so many different kind of little stories that I could tell that all kind of vary in the way they've unfolded. But the closest I've ever come to having to shoot an animal was with an elephant bull. He came incredibly close to us, and he was probably from me to you away. So as he would fling out his trunk towards me, it would come probably about a meter away from my head. Thankfully, he kept stopping at that distance, but what was so scary about this situation is that he pinned us down against just a big tree, a big ebony tree, for about half an hour before we could radio a vehicle to come in and chase him off the scene. So that was probably the most life-threatening scenario I'd been in. 4 days prior to him pinning us against that tree, he had actually attacked somebody. He had got a hold of a human and tried to trample him. Thankfully, the person survived. He fell into kind of a rocky outcrop with almost a natural kind of cavity, and his whole body could fit into that hole, and when the elephant was trying to stand on him and crush him, it couldn't get at him because he was in this small little crack in the rocks. So that was my probably most scary, but there have been lots of other scary moments with lions charging. I remember once tracking a leopard We knew she had cubs at the time, but the tracks we were following were just of her, not of her 3-month-old cubs walking alongside her. So we figured, well, let's follow these tracks and hopefully it'll take us to a kill. We were moving through a thick area along the Sand River, which is in the Sabi Sands, just a bit further south of us here. A lot of thick riparian vegetation, and we were moving through. It was first light, the sun was rising, and the tracks were heading towards the sun, which is really not the ideal situation, because when you're walking into the sun, you can't really see too well. But I noticed a small kind of flicker in a bush, and I stopped, lifted up my binoculars, and as I looked and focused my binoculars and saw a tiny little cub peering at me, that's when she came charging out of the bushes. And leopards are incredibly quick animals, as a lot of you know. It was just a flash of gold and black rosettes all around me, and she literally came all the way around myself and my tracker. We were both standing right next to one another, and I was almost kind of prodding her away with the rifle. It all happened so quickly, it was such a blur, but that also got my heart racing. What was her name? She was a big female leopard. It slips my mind. She was a very, very big female leopard that I was lucky enough to spend time with in the beginning of my career. Back in 2008, I started guiding here in the Sabi Sands, a bit further south of where we are now, in a beautiful area along the Sand River. So yes, a number of exciting moments do happen out here, but considering how much time we spend on foot, it actually doesn't happen very often that we get into dangerous situations. Hello Trista, you would like to know how confident are we feeling about finding some big cats for tomorrow's TV show? Well, we've got not only Herbie and Rexon, who you guys know are permanent trackers on site. We've employed another 2 trackers who have come in to help, and they've been doing an incredibly good job over the last week or so, finding us a lot of animals. So I'm confident that we are going to have some cats in the bag. Obviously we've got the Mara crew as well, and it's quite easy to find the big cats in the Mara. So we've got 3 vehicles out there. So between them, the 2 vehicles out here, plus Steph and myself on bushwalk, I'm confident that we are going to get lucky. The trick comes in, Krista, is that finding the big cats is often not the be-all and end-all. It's what those cats are actually doing once you've found them that can become the next kind of piece of the puzzle, because if all of us had cats that were fast asleep, it wouldn't make for the most exciting TV show. Yet it is a reality, and it has happened in the past that we find the cheetah, we find the lion, we find the leopard, but they're just snoozing for the whole TV show. So let's hope that not only do we find the big cats, but we find the big cats on the move.
So the gremlins have now decided to hit my comm system a little bit. It's going to be a little bit tricky for me just coming around the corner, but our signal should still say fine. So you can stick with me, no problem, and we'll chat away. I'm still kind of looking for Hasana, but I haven't really picked up any tracks. So what I'm going to try and do, because it looks like the cloud cover has lifted rather than coming down, which is good, I'm going to head back to where Tingana is, and I'm going to see if our gremlins will just leave us alone and we can get a visual on him, because I know everybody would like a nice update with him and his injury. But again, when I saw him this morning, he hasn't moved too far, but he's not unhealthy. I think he just needs some rest and some time, and he'll sort himself out nicely. He is a nice big male. For those of you who may not have watched before, Tingana, we're not quite sure exactly when Tingana was born. So he's about 10 or 12 years old, and he is one of our dominant males in the area. But most leopards, by the time you reach sort of 12 years old, you're really starting to push up into old age. I know leopards that have lived in the wild to be about 18, but that's an exception rather than the rule. And so he's getting a lot of pressure. He's getting a lot of pressure from Hasana, who's going to be 2 years old in February. And Mvula is also about 10 or 12 years old. He's also kicking around around still, so there's that pressure. Quarantine is pressuring him. I would assume that Tomba would start pressuring him as well, depending on where Tomba's going to go, although in the sort of 2 months that I've been here, I haven't seen Tomba at all, so I have a feeling that Tomba's moving maybe more south, but that's just a guess from the little bits of information that I've had. So it'll be interesting for him. I was talking with Tristan and Viam earlier, and apparently they saw yesterday he's got a couple of marks in that paw, so it looks possibly like maybe he was in a bit of a fight. And it happens, especially, I mean, remember, cats eat meat, and so they've got a lot of bacteria in their mouths, so when they're and in their claws as well, and so when they're fighting and they're using claws and teeth, and if they bite or scratch, it's going to get a little bit of infection. But again, the hardy animals, and usually he's still in good condition, so usually they pull off fine, so I'm not too worried about it. But again, we'll just keep an eye on it and see how it goes. Sorry, Curse, can you just try that one more time for me? Meter age 9, you're curious to know how many leopards are around that haven't been seen before. That's a super good question. So some of the times we talk about population numbers of the large cats that are left on the continent in sub-Saharan Africa on the show. So for instance, there's about 20,000 wild lions left. There's about 7,000 wild cheetahs left. With something like leopard, we don't have any numbers for the whole population, sub-Saharan Africa and the whole continent, because they're so elusive. So for your question about how many unseen leopards might be in the area, I couldn't actually give you an accurate answer. I would guess if we're seeing sort of, let's say for now, 10 individuals on and off within our area, that there might be 2 or 3 other individuals that we don't see as often or know about that might be skirting. But also because leopards are quite territorial, and they have set territories that are somewhat movable, we can guesstimate more often than not that there'll probably be less leopards that we don't see and more leopards that we do. But that's also just for our area, because in our area we have populations of leopards that have been so used to humans for so long that they see us as part of the natural environment and just carry on life and without feeling the need to hide all the time. Whereas leopards that have not had that same exposure, their natural instinct is to hide away as much as possible. Not necessarily because they're fearful of us, but that's just their nature to be more elusive. And also with a lot of the leopards that we do see often who are used to us, they have days, just like the lions do, they have days where if they don't want to be seen, we're not going to find them. It does happen. It's a very good question and a very good thought. I used to do some leopard research many years ago, and the woman that I was working under had been working with leopards for about 15 years, and she was amazing. And the area that she was working in, the populations had been hunted quite a bit, so they actually had a full-on fear of humans. So part of what she was doing was trying to relax the populations. But a lot of how she was working is she was working closely with trackers, because each individual leopard has an individual track, and when you get trackers that really know them, they can tell you whose track that is, not just from the territory they're in, but the actual individual. And then doing ID kits, obviously, with the marker lines. I don't know if there's any viewers out there who have any little gifts they want to put up with the whisker lines for any of our new viewers that might not know what I'm talking about there. And then you can sometimes do a more invasive way of doing research where you dart them and you put a GPS collar on them, and then it sends data in, so you only have to deal with them sort of once or twice, rather, once put the collar on and once take it off, and then the information comes from the GPS down onto a computer system. There's also a way to do with the collar with a telemetry system. It's like this little antenna, and it has beeps, and you can follow them that way. It just depends on what type of research you're doing and how invasive or non-invasive you want to be. So that can sometimes help in a small area to know the numbers of leopards you might not be seeing. But in general, it's a hard one. It's a very difficult one. Even with the cheetah numbers, I've worked on properties where the cheetahs are very used to humans, and I've worked on properties where the cheetahs don't want to be seen at all, so that can also be quite difficult. It's good questions. You guys are having the best questions. Well, you always have good questions, but today you're having some really, really great questions with lots of good commentary and stories. Teak, you're curious to know what happened with our injured wild dog. Teak, the ecologists and the management of Sabi Sands decided to do what they normally do with populations that are settled. So even though the wild dog is an endangered species continent-wide, our populations here are in this area are quite settled. So we do what's called in situ management, which is hands-off management in cases and scenarios where injuries are naturally induced. So that injury on that wild dog had to do most likely with being attacked by a lion. It's not a human-caused injury, so it was left alone to let nature take its course. And unfortunately, yesterday when Senzo and I went to go check on it, the wild dog had passed away. It does happen. It is unfortunate. It is sad, but it is part of nature, and that just happened to be the outcome for that scenario. And we did if you watched the show from yesterday afternoon, we did a small little segment on it, and you can have a look there. All right, so Scott is still on walkabout, so let's head on over to him and see what he wants to show us.
Well, nothing to show you right now, but we are on one of the roads. Now, it's always a bit of a toss-up when being on bushwalk whether to stay on the roads or follow the game trails through the bush. And the benefits of being on the roads is that is where the clearest messages of the bush telegraph are left for us. It's far easier to see tracks on the road because the sand is often finely churned up from vehicles, especially after it's rained. If we look here, the sand is very hard, so even though, now I push my fingers down very hard, you can see a few prints, but if I do the same thing here, it becomes a lot easier to see a track where the vehicles have actually been driving. So the vehicles driving after the rain kind of churns up what is ordinarily a hardened layer of earth on top and makes it a bit easier to see tracks. We're not too far from Tundi, a female leopard's den site, and we just kind of working in this area. Hopefully we'll find some tracks of her, or maybe hear some alarm calls, and they'll be able to lead us to her position if she is not at the den. Now, it's exciting prospects. The den site is going to be open as of tomorrow, so hopefully tomorrow morning a lot of you guys will see Tundi's little cub for the first time. We think there's only one. We're not 100% sure. Tristan's only been in there once just to establish that it was in fact a den site. So very, very exciting prospects, and let's hope that Tundi gets lucky and manages to raise it to adulthood. Sadly, the odds are stacked against her. A lot of the times leopardess will lose their cubs, either to hyena, other male leopards, possibly lion. They are very, very vulnerable when they are small. Okay, Krista, you'd like to know if there's any chance of seeing any other cats out here, like caracal and serval? Yes, there certainly is a chance, but it's about this big. In all my time in the Sabi Sands, I've never seen a caracal, yet they do occur here. Serval, you've got probably a slightly better chance than caracal, but again, they're not highly numerous in this part of South Africa, and they typically tend to be a bit more nocturnal and quite secretive. They're not also as habituated as the other big cats like lion, leopard, and cheetah, so even if we were to drive past one, there's a strong chance it's going to hide from us. Not to say we're not going to get lucky, but your chances are better up in the Maasai Mara. Certainly with serval, we've had a lot of great sightings up there with them. They're quite easy to find, and also a lot of them are quite relaxed. So the serval are good up there. I think Jamie or somebody did see a caracal up there, but there haven't been too many caracal sightings. I'm excited for us to get into other areas of the world where there's other big cats. Oh, interesting. Apparently Taylor saw a caracal on Cheetah Plains once. So there has been one seen here, which is in the Sabi Sands, not too far from here. So there's a small chance that, another one could be spotted at some point in time, but it's few and far between. Like I was saying, there's so many other big cats, jaguars, tigers being my two other favorites that I would love to see. I've never seen neither jaguars nor tigers in the wild, so that's something that I'm really hoping we will be able to do with you guys following alongside for the ride. So got to keep telling your friends about Safari Live. The more people that join on our vehicles and our walks, the more places we can take you to. So phone a friend, tell them about Safari Live, and then it will increase our chances of going and showing you jaguars, tigers, and who knows what else, polar bears. It's never ending where we can go and take you guys on safari. Good. So that's your homework. Please phone a friend, tell them about the big TV show tomorrow, tell them that it would be unwise not to watch it, cancel their plans, whatever they had in store, and hopefully that way we will be able to take you to more places. Very good. We're going to send you across to Noelle. I'm not too sure what she's up to. Why don't you go find out?
Oh, Scott, you make me laugh so hard. Phone a friend. Yeah, so Scott's basically saying the more of you that know about us and the more following we get, the following for Safari Live over the years has grown exponentially, and you guys are all wonderful, we love you, is that means that we get to possibly go to more locations. So on Scott's wish list apparently it's jaguars, which would be down in the Pantanal, I would assume, in Brazil. Polar bears, I don't know where we would see polar bears, maybe Svalbard if we went up there, or maybe Churchill in Canada. There's a couple spots to go and see them, and that would be super interesting. If I had a wish list for our next destination, I would say South Luangwa National Park in Zambia, because it is just other than here in the Lowveld, it is my favorite place in the whole world. Yeah, that would be super interesting. What'd you say, Sense? Oh, what are we gonna see there? I'll tell you now. No, just Sense. I believe the question was, have there been any introduced alien species like the rabbits in Australia and the cane toads into this area? So we have some vegetation that's been accidentally introduced, red Mexican zinnias, which I haven't seen yet this season, and coquibos, which I actually haven't seen yet this season as well, and things like blue gums or eucalyptus. Well, most of them have been taken out, but those would have been introduced. As a sort of animal species, there hasn't been anything large here in this area like a rabbit or a toad, but we do get I think Steph told me the other day it was a single-banded snail. It's this type of snail that comes in on potted plants by accident. So the potted plants come in from overseas, and then sometimes you'll find people will buy them and then bring them to either their houses in the area, or maybe they come into a lodge, and then those snails will come, and that's quite detrimental. But in general, this whole area that we're traversing has been a wilderness area for hundreds of years. So there's not a lot of reintroduced. Now there's been relocations / reintroduction of species that had been decimated out of this area due to human causes that were brought back in because they're not supposed to be naturally occurring here. There's some cases like that. But no, nothing. We've been very fortunate. Nothing like what happened in Australia with the rabbits and the cane toads. Super interesting question. Thank you. So it's interesting about that. I once had a guest that told me that we in South Africa were not doing a good as job as we should be doing with the poaching, and we should bring all of our rhinos to Australia and they can be in Australia. And I found it a very interesting thought. I got where he was going with it. Basically, he's saying our government there is a little bit more stable. We've got different environmental and conservation laws, so this would help with protection. That's basically where he was going with it. But now when you take a flagship species, and a large flagship species, a herbivore species like a rhino, and you bring it to a completely different continent where it didn't even exist. So white rhinos have existed on this continent for 50 million years. Okay. Now Australia broke away from Africa 180 million years ago, so we're talking big differences. So they would never have occurred on Australia. They did occur, sorry about that, there's a little bump there. They do occur obviously in Asian countries, a little bit different, but they do occur there. So when you move such a large animal, the implications not only for the area that you're removing them from, but also the area you're moving them to, for me in particular, far outweighs the good thought behind something like that. It's really important to keep wildlife where wildlife should be and make sure that they have spaces, because they were evolved to be in those areas to fit specific niches. And it's not just them, it's all the insects that's around them, it's the plant species they eat, it's the way the dung fertilizes the soil and the plant species, and Yeah, there's huge ripple effects and knock-on effects and repercussions for something like that, as you would know with something like the cane toads and the rabbits that happen in Australia. As an interesting thought. Okay, I'm sorry, my gremlins are still poking around inside my ear. I'm really sorry about that, but I do think that something has happened with Scott, something good, and we are going to go to him. So let's head on over to Scott quickly.
Yes, we do have something good going on here. We've just seen a white-faced whistling duck fly out of this massive green bushes, and I'm actually not entirely sure where they nest, so I just want to make sure that we don't actually have a white-faced whistling duck nest over here. Doesn't look like it, and if any of you would be so kind as to do a bit of research into where they actually nest, it would be wonderful. They're such cool little birds. Is why they have their name, the whistling duck. That's what their call sounds like. Oh, I thought I saw some little frogs jumping about here as I came in. I want to see if I can't flush one from its hiding place. Come out, wherever you are. Not too sure what kind of a frog it was. There's one or two of them, tiny little things that hopped out of here. Here we go. They're tiny. On the side, Dave, if you go on that, it's just sitting on... Oh, there we go. Have you got it? Let me try chase it back towards you. Any good?
Oh, we got a quick one.
It's a tiny little frog. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. It's just next to that little blade of grass directly under my finger. It's very well camouflaged.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. It's absolutely... Oh, there it goes. It's tiny. It's the size of my fingernail. What are you? It actually looks like a toad. No, this is definitely a baby toad. It must have just metamorphosized into full toad mode as opposed to being a tadpole mode. Awesome. I'm not too sure exactly what toad this is. I can tell by its build that it is very toad-like, I'm guessing. If there's any frog experts watching, or toad experts, you're welcome to correct me. But it's absolutely tiny. If I put my finger next to it, you'll get an idea. It's as big as my fingernail. Cute! Tiny little critter. Now, thanks very much to Kirsty, who's already done some homework for me, and she has said that white-faced whistling ducks will nest in areas just like this, in kind of reed beds on the edge of water sources. So we were unlucky now, but maybe next time we come back here we will find a little duck's nest. Very good, very good. It's a very peaceful evening. The wind seems to have died down a bit. The rain has stayed at bay, thankfully, and hopefully it will continue to be this way. I love this stage of the evening. As darkness begins to set in, it becomes very exciting being out on foot. It's also been quite nice just taking it slow, enjoying the smaller things, not on the trail of anything big and strong. And I'm told a lot of you were impressed by that little toad's cuteness, which I'm very happy to hear. Like I said, there's so many interesting little things happening out here that are quite easy to overlook. Hello, Tesla, just 7 years old. You'd like to know how many kinds of frogs live in South Africa, and I'm not sure exactly, but there will be many, many different types of frogs and toads that live here. I'm guessing well over 100, but I'm not too sure on the exact numbers. I can see some tracks in the mud here, most of which have already kind of dried up. Some big elephant prints you can see over here, the big round ones. Oh, here's a water scorpion. Cool. Come check this out. Oh, that's a bit squidgy. I'm going to need a little stick. It's just in this little puddle over here. They're bizarre little insects. It's actually not a scorpion. Just call the water scorpion because it looks like one. Let me try and get it out for you guys. Come on. There it goes. Look at that. What a strange little creature. Very scorpion-like, but certainly not a scorpion. It's an insect. It's got only 6 legs, not 8. So it's not an arachnid. And I'm loving all these little things that we're bumping into, all these little treasures, hidden treasures that we would never be able to see from a vehicle. Cool. Not too sure what they actually feed on and what they do exactly. So I've got some homework to do when I get home this evening. Learn a little bit more about them. Another frog. This is a frog, it's not a toad. Okay. Okay, have you got it there, Dave? I think it's going to stay put for a while. This looks like kind of a grass frog, I'm guessing. It's got a very, very sharp nose, very different to the bulbous head of that toad we saw earlier. Also doing a great job hopping about, springing itself from spot to spot. And it's so easier for us to forget how ridiculous some of these little creatures are. I mean, imagine if we could jump like 20 meters from a standstill. Doing! Because that's the equivalent of what this little thing's doing because of its tiny size. Let's see if we can get it to hop one more time for you. We might have to do a little slow motion on this if we do get it to bounce or hop. Oh, there's another one that just came shooting out the... Oh! Let's see if we can get it jumping towards you. This is a knobthorn tree. It's going to pop out now. Doink! It almost jumped into the camera lens there. And off it goes. A good display of how agile and how powerful those hind legs of those little frogs are, sending it rocketing out of harm's way. Good. Good, good, good. Oh, got a thorn I need to take out here. We can show you guys this experiment. It's a knob thorn that got me in the back of the leg here. I'm going to use my trusty Leatherman to get it out. Not that I need to. Kind of over dramatizing the scene here a bit. Oh, it was hardly anything. Shame. Tiny little thorn. Sorry to take you away from your thorn friends. Okay, very good. Enough of my antics and over to Noel.
Enough of your ticks, Scott. Scott, we love your ticks. All right, so before we get to Tingana, I was not far from where Tristan had Tundi with a leopard kill this morning. So I just want to have a look around. Sorry for the back of my head. I'm just trying to see if I can see anything. Now, oh, there's the kill. I don't see a leopard. Let me just pull forward a wee bit. Can you see it there, Sand? So she's cached it under a tree just here. And this is also the area where Scott saw that unidentified male. So this has definitely been eaten on, but I'm not seeing any sign of leopards. I have a feeling before Tristan had to get towed away, he was talking about Tawny's tracks going east. So she's probably gone back to her den to feed her little one, well, nurse her little one. Now, everyone, don't forget, it is a big cat week on Nat Geo Wild. And tomorrow morning for us, but it's actually this evening for you guys, yes, if I'm doing my time changes correctly, 10 o'clock Eastern on the 14th, which is today, you all will be able to watch a very special Safari live on Nat Geo Wild in the States. So that's 10 o'clock Eastern time. So I hope everyone tunes in. And as Scott was saying before, tell all your friends. We will be out and about for 2 hours, so from 10 to 12 in the PM. And then for us, it's tomorrow morning. But for you all, as I was just saying now, it is this evening. So I'm not seeing any activity around here. I have a feeling that little male, if he is here, is probably hiding, and Tony will probably only return to this maybe later this evening or possibly tomorrow morning. So you're going to definitely have to tune in to the show on Nat Geo Wild to see what happens with that. It's super, super, super exciting. All right, so let's definitely go to Tingana then, because I don't think that he's moved very far. I am just looking sort of under bushes and checking inside of trees around me. Ginger, I think your question was, are Tingana and Mvula the dominant males in this area? And that would be, for the most part, correct, yes. Tingana more than Mvula. Mvula's been pushed out of a lot of his area, but so is Tingana. Quarantine's sort of edging in, and Hassana is being cheeky. Hassana hasn't taken over territory yet, but he is being cheeky. So yeah, I think that's a fair assumption to say, Ginger, for sure. Mvula and Tingana. But also the two of them traverse areas that we don't traverse, but for us here where we physically are, that is a very fair statement indeed. Okay, sorry again, I'm not looking directly at you. I just don't want to hurt Wendy. Wendy and I have come to a very good understanding, and I'm trying very hard to not injure her, like I did the other day with the crazy wild dog chase. Oh, that would be something that would be fun to pop out tomorrow morning / this evening for you all in the northern hemisphere. The wild dogs, haven't seen them in a while. They went over to Torchwood, which is on our east, and I haven't seen them since then. And Senzo and I had so much fun with them for those several sightings that we had. It was just absolutely fantastic. And you all know that wild dogs are my favorite predator. Now, the only predator that I haven't been able to show you here, just me, I know Tristan's showed you before, and I'm pretty sure Scotty D you might have, but we'll have to ask him when we go back to him. So I haven't been able to show you a cheetah here. They keep coming in from the Kruger boundary, but they're not making it as far west as we are. So I'm holding, crossing fingers and holding thumbs that they pop up soon. Scarlett, you're curious to know if I think a kangaroo would survive in South Africa. Scarlett, that's a really interesting question. I actually don't know that much about kangaroos. Now, kangaroos is something that I would love to see in the wild. I've had many guests from Australia, and I've had guests say, we've got kangaroos in our backyard, and for me, I'm like, oh my goodness, a kangaroo. I would love to see one, and I haven't made it to Australia or New Zealand yet. That's both on my list. So I think that a kangaroo would do okay, but remember that Australia doesn't have large predators like we have here in Africa, so I don't know how long it would survive. I think it would find things to eat here, but I think there'd be a lot of things that would eat it. And then also, think about it this way: if you spend all of your life in one place and then you go to some place completely different, so if I were to spend my whole life in South Africa, say, in one spot, and then go to India for the first time, the water is different, the food is different, all the macroorganisms that go into your gut will be different, everything will be different around, so your body's going to react differently. It's the same for the wildlife. So if your body is accustomed to certain organisms that help it to function, and then you displace it somewhere else, there could be a consequence that you never know. So I think in general it might be okay regardless of the predators, unless they get preyed upon, but I don't know how well it would do with the type of vegetation we have here, because it's a bit different. All right, now let's ask Scott if he has any cheetah stories about the Juma Sabi Sands area, and we're going to head back to him and see what his answer is.
I didn't quite catch that question, but I'll get to it as soon as I know what it is. It's something to do with cheetah. What I can tell you is that there's not many of them in the Sabi Sands, and in all my time here, I have seen very, very few cheetah and spent very little time with them, sadly. Having said that, though, it's a good example of how, when planning a safari, and if any of you are ever planning a safari, it's very important to do research into kind of what likely animals you will see in any given place. There's certain areas of South Africa, not just in the Maasai Mara, where you get good cheetah viewings. There's some wonderful places in a province called KwaZulu-Natal, which is my home province, where you get great cheetah viewing. But here in the Sabi Sands, it's more leopard and lion, and I think our number one cat that we pride ourselves on in this area, or at least the reserve prides itself on, is the leopard. These are not bran muffins. It would be nice if they were. I'm feeling a bit peckish. They're quite nice and big, but in terms of elephant poop, they are small. And I would hazard a guess that this was a 3 or 4 year old elephant that deposited these little bran muffins here. You can also see it urinated. There's a very big patch of urine, and this is fresh. The fact that no dung beetles have come onto the scene to start helping themselves to all this dung, which they'll roll up into a ball and lay their eggs in, because they haven't come onto the scene yet, gives us a good indication that this is very fresh. And as you can see, we're moving through a fairly thick area. There is a small riverbed that we're working our way up, and we need to be cautious, always taking the wind into account. It's not really in our favor because we are walking that way and the wind is blowing that way, but it's unavoidable to always have the wind in your favor, and as long as you're aware that there's a strong chance that whatever is ahead of you is going to smell you before you actually see it, means you're kind of ready for what may happen thereafter. So now that we've got into some softer sand, we'll be able to tell which way the elephants were moving. And interestingly, I'm fairly certain they've come down this pathway and moved in the direction of the dung. So they've already moved through this area. If we look at this one track over here, it's a youngster, possibly the same individual that made the poop. There's a small little depression. So it would have put its heel down over here and then flicked up that little bit of sand where you can see that depression there. So that gives us the indication that they were moving down this pathway in the opposite direction to us, so we must have just narrowly missed them. Having said that, it doesn't mean that there's not another herd of elephants up ahead, or who knows, maybe a buffalo, even though there's not many around. I don't think I've actually seen one buffalo since I've been here, which is a small miracle, but I guess the drought did take its toll on them. And it's not to say that there's no more buffalo in the greater Kruger National Park. We are part of a massive, massive ecosystem here, roughly 300 kilometers long by about 50 kilometers wide. And there are other areas that were obviously not as affected by the drought and more suitable to the buffalo that they all moved into, or those that didn't die. And slowly the buffalo are coming back into this area, but I've only seen their tracks. I have yet to see one, which is very interesting. There's actually a spot up ahead where I'm guessing the same herd of elephants whose tracks we've just looked at now were sleeping up ahead of us. There's a beautiful tambuti thicket type of tree, and they have for many, many years. Even in my past time here, they've often liked to camp out under these tambuti trees. Hello, Kaylin, you've mentioned that you would never want to see a buffalo on foot, and yes, especially if they startle you and you don't know they're there. Even a big buffalo bull in thick vegetation can come out of nowhere, and it's probably also the last animal that I would want to come across. Having said that, the breeding herds of buffalo, the large herds, they actually can be quite good fun to approach on foot. They're more inquisitive, they don't feel too threatened because they've got safety in numbers, and you can have some good fun approaching them on foot. They often just come looking up at you with their heads held high, looking down their noses at you, not squinting like I'm doing now. I'm just doing that to hopefully make some of you laugh, but they look down their nostrils, holding their heads up high to work out what you are. Alright, well, Noelle didn't have any luck at Tundi's kill, but hopefully she's going to have a little bit of more luck in the area where Tingana was last left this morning. She's approaching that area, so go and jump on and see if you guys don't get lucky.
Thanks, Scott. I also hope we get more luck with Tingana. We're not far from where we saw him this morning and where we tried to be this afternoon, but hold thumbs. gremlins, go away. The rain is coming in. It changes everything a little bit different. I can see it coming. It's surrounding us. Rain, you need to hold off for 35 more minutes. And also not tomorrow morning, please. And then you can rain any other time you want. So we're going to head to him, and hopefully he hasn't moved. I don't think he will have moved far, but hopefully he hasn't moved. And we'll take a gander. This morning was really interesting because he was just sitting there and there's elephants all around. It was very cool. Trista, you're curious to know if which leopard we would step in to help to preserve the species. Am I repeating that correctly, Kirst? Okay, so Trista, it's really important to understand that when you step in to preserve a species, it means that there's only a handful left. So say 10 in number or 15 in number. And there's way more leopards than that across the continent of Africa. And then there's other species of leopard that are doing okay. There's some that aren't. So when we think as humans about preserving a species, we have to be very careful, because most of the time when humans interfere, it doesn't turn out well. So when a leopard like Tingana has an injury, it's the same sort of thing as a wild dog, sort of hands off and let him sort himself out. If it is very, very, very stressful for a wild animal to be handled by humans. So let's say we bring the vet in for Tingana, he gets darted. He doesn't go to sleep. That serum that he's given just immobilizes him. His eyes have to be covered. We have to make sure that his mouth is open so he can breathe. He still understands everything that's going around with him. So now that's happened. Now you're a leopard where your hearing, your sense of smell are extremely acute, and you now have all these people working around you. It's extremely stressful for them. There's also scenarios where humans have stepped in for, say, a rhino or an elephant or a leopard like this, and the animal has died. So we have to be very careful to not play creator, if that makes sense. So for Tingana, with this paw, we're not going to step in with this. Now, I know that there are some other scenarios that have happened and have gone a little bit differently, and there's been some other choices that have happened. When the ecologists and the management make these choices, they have years and years and years of schooling behind them, as well as a full comprehension of the entire scenario. And one of the doing, which is a very important thing for all of us to remember, myself included, is to take the emotion out of everything. Because when you put the emotion in, sorry guys, I'm just trying to think of the best way to get in here. When you put the emotion in, you're not going to make the best decision for the animal. You're going to make the best decision for you, and that just, for us, it's not always. It needs to be more about the wild animal than anything else. So that was a very straightforward answer for your question. That was a stick up my side of my car there. So I'm very sorry if it sounded a little bit brusque, but it is just very, especially after the wild dog thing we were dealing with, it's really important to remember that manhandling wildlife, even if we think we're saving them, is 99% of the time not the best scenario to do. Oh, that's fantastic. Pihan, you're saying it's a bit like an alien abduction. Pihan, I think that is possibly the best way that you can put it, it's like an alien abduction. Sorry guys, you are gonna have to stare at the back of my head because I keep running myself through bushes here. So just give me 2 shakes of a lamb's tail as I meander through this to get us through. And then bless you, Senzo, at the back with your sneezing. Bless you again. Senzo, did I drive over something that you're allergic to? Maybe. Maybe, he says. Okay, so where I saw Tingana this morning was sort of straight in front of us that way, and then where he is now is in the same direction but just a little bit closer. And he's doing what leopards do best, which is to find a little space and camouflage himself and rest. Sorry, everybody. So it's interesting. It's not incredibly thick through here, but there's a lot of fallen over dead trees and stumps that I'm meandering through and trying not to get stunk into the sump or side of the car. I think, Curse, that's a good idea. I think while I am just meandering through this minefield that is this area here, let's go over to Scott quickly, and then I will hopefully find Tingana for you, and then we'll come back.
It's beginning to drizzle ever so slightly. We're not too far from camp, thankfully, but we are under a beautiful big ebony tree, which will provide us with a little bit of shelter for now. It's a very fine mist, and I love this spot. I've come for one or two picnics here in the past. Very beautiful spot, and in and along this riverbed called the Mulwati, we've had countless leopard sightings even as we were walking up along it. Now Herbie, the expert tracker who I'm teamed up with, was pointing out a number of trees where he's found certain leopards with their kills. No luck today, but we're not finished traversing it. We've got a little bit further to move up along it, and hopefully we'll bump into a leopard along the way. I'm hoping Noelle gets lucky. I'm told she's doing some bushwhacking, trying to find you old Tingana. I'd really love to know what happened to him and what caused that injury to his paw. Was it trying to take down a big prey item like a kudu or an Inyala bull? Was he fighting with another leopard? Impossible to be certain. I'm told Vehement Tristan did get a few kind of views of some puncture marks and bite marks, but they're not very clearly evident, and you'd think that if he was in a fight with another male leopard, he'd have a few scratches on his nose and, you know, a few more telltale signs of a cat fight. So I'm wondering if he didn't actually try and take down some big kind of member of prey. I have seen big male leopards like Tingana take down fully grown male kudu, which is a serious undertaking for an animal the size of a leopard. Who knows, but hopefully he'll recover. Sharon, you're concerned that Tingana might be sick, and he could be, but I mean, it's clearly kind of like a bone injury, you would think, or a dislocation or a sprain. He's hardly putting any pressure on that front left leg, so that would indicate to me that it's not sickness. If he all of a sudden became thin and was walking okay on all four legs but just losing condition, then sure, I think sickness would be likely. But I'm guessing it's just an injury. He is also an old leopard. He's not a spring chicken. He's certainly racked up some mileage over his 10 or 11 years. I think he's 10 or 11 years old. So certainly not a youngster. And I guess it's not uncommon for animals to injure themselves and then recover. It's fascinating how resilient wild animals can be, and there have been a number of ridiculous stories of animals like hyena surviving with only 2 legs after the back 2 legs have been chewed off in a fight. Sadly, the wild dog that we lost a few days ago wasn't so fortunate, but it is Mother Nature's way of making sure that only the strongest and fittest survive, and that we must never take for granted and never think otherwise of, because it's important that our wild animals are kept strong and fit and healthy, and the only way to do that is by making sure that only the best individuals make it through. Those that don't provide good meals to others and just make their genetic pool that much stronger. What's the wind doing? Not a whole bunch at the moment. Kind of gently wafting around. Hello, Bobby, you'd like to know if the cats get distemper, and I'm told that they actually can indeed, but I haven't personally seen any individuals with it, but I'm told that it is a possibility. I don't think that is the case for Tingana, and thankfully in this reserve, even though there are risks of any disease like distemper, it's a very well managed reserve, and because there's a lot of people traversing it, we tend to kind of know what's going on and can take care of situations like that before they get out of control, whereas you get other wilderness areas that are far more vast and not as well patrolled, and therefore animals in those areas, if any diseases or sicknesses do get in there, obviously it's more difficult for any of the professionals to know about it because it's not as well traversed as the Sabi Sands. I think it's fair to say that this is probably one of the most traversed areas of the Greater Kruger National Park in terms of the amount of tourists that come through here, in terms of the amount of guides driving around every day, in terms of the amount of road networks there are. You get some areas of the Kruger National Park where there's many, many miles with just no roads and no access for humans to go in, although there are some incredible walking trails that you can do through the Kruger National Park that typically take you through these areas with absolutely no roads. Something that I would love to do in the future, go and explore some relatively unexplored parts of the Kruger National Park. You okay, Dave? Dave nearly got caught in a buffalo thorn there. He does have a long antenna pole sticking up behind him, which can cause a little bit of trouble from time to time, either for the cameraman getting caught up in overhanging bushes, or we can actually try and simulate it. If we were to bend down and start talking about something and Dave was to continue bending down, if he bends down enough, dunk, the antenna will hit me on the head. So that does happen from time to time, and hasn't actually happened to me. Dave's been a very good antenna driver. He's got his license, and thankfully haven't been walloped by him. And it's just a matter of time that we do get ourselves into some exciting situations where these things are unavoidable. Here's some little bits of mud that an elephant would have left here after a mud wallow. He would have come and scraped his way, and look at how high the mud goes, all the way up there. And I'm 6 foot, so that's maybe 7-8 foot up, and a good idea of how big these elephants actually are. Very good. Noelle is still on the search for Tingana. Hopefully she's getting closer. Why don't you go and have a look?
Okay, where Senzo has pointed his camera is where Tingana was. And I was sitting here with Senz and we're just listening. All of a sudden, up ahead, we can hear Tingana. So he's moved. So obviously he can move even with his injury. And he was doing his No, it's a horrible leopard impression. Please excuse me. So we're going to reverse out of our little area. I don't think he's far. I think he's maybe 100 to 200 meters just in front of us this way. So you can stick with me. I'll try not to lose Senzo off the back or hurt Wendy or myself in the process in this thick little bushes. It's a tricky little spot that we found ourselves in, but of course, Tingana being a leopard, that's what leopards do best, is find tricky little spots and fit themselves inside. This is our 100-point turn for the day. Sorry, wisteria. Okay. Ooh, let's go. So, because he has a injured paw, he's what we would call a sticky niao. A niao is a foot in Shangaan, and that's what we call an animal that sort of hops along, so we can also call him hop along. So he's not going to be moving too quickly. There's also the possibility that he's resting again, although usually with leopards, when they make that call, they are moving. Lions will make their audio territory calls that lying down or moving, or in any sort of scenario that they feel like, because they're a lion and that's what they do. But leopards tend to be a little bit more practical about the situation. So I heard the sound from in here. So I think while I'm driving and looking for him and also trying not to get over the stumps, I think why don't you all look with me? You've got about the same eye line that I have, and we'll see if you all manage to spot him before Senzo and I do. Although I have to say, Senzo's eyesight is pretty spectacular, I'm not gonna lie. Now, the other thing that I think is he's where we showed you before is inside a drainage line. I think he's most likely moving inside of that drainage line. So the other thing that I need to try and do, oh, that is a very thorny bush. The other thing I need to try and do is try and see if there's a way for us to get inside of this drainage line. It's a very tricky drainage line to get into. Very steep banks, sharp banks. Ooh, Scott's getting rained on at the moment. I can see the rain, and we've got a little bit of drizzle, but we haven't been hit quite yet, but we have our hat on. Scott's out on his own 2 feet on bushwalk, so it's a little bit trickier for him. All right, I think, hold on one sec, I just want to listen. Remember, the birds will tell us where leopards are a lot of the time, and the alarm call for them. But around here, he should be somewhere right in here. Now, he could be just down below. Let's just check. Check here at the front of the car. So if you all were physically with me in the car, like your physical bodies were here, this would be the exact same thing that we would be doing. So whether you're with me on camera or with me on the car like Senzo, this is how you search for a leopard, and this is what you do. And we use all of our eyes and all of our ears. And I'm hoping he calls again. It'll make it easier. Trista, I have not lost a cameraman off the back, although the other day I was very close to losing Senzo. We were rushing to try and get to some wild dogs, and I hit a bump very hard. And Senzo's whole jacket went over his face, and he flew up off the seat a little bit. I'm sheepishly looking at him in the back. He wasn't impressed. But no, I've never lost a tracker off the front of the car. I've never lost a guest, and I've never lost a cameraman. And I hope that it doesn't start today ever. I think he's here. I don't think he's too far from where we are right now. So that sound that we heard, I really just want him to make it again. Because I don't have any physical tracks, and because obviously we can't see him or else we'd show him to you, I need that audio to help pinpoint. So you can track via foot, or you can track via sound, or if it's something like an elephant or a rhino or a buffalo that's rolled in the mud, sometimes you can track them by the mud trail that they leave. Got lots of francolins crying. But because this rain's coming and the bird life in general is quieted down a little bit, come on, Tingana. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if he's lying sort of right here and staring at us. Can we hear any of these bird calls in the background? A little bit. There's woodland kingfisher calling. There was the francolins calling. There's some scrub robins calling. Here's our francolin. Now we just need Tingana. Come on, Tingana. At least give us a leopard sound. Everyone's waiting. Scrub robins are very active. Now the other thing, so let's say we heard a Senzo. Let's say I was with guests and I had my tracker and everything. Something we might do would be to get off at this point and sort of walk. But for me right now, one, I've got you guys with me here, and then two, because Tingana has an injury, I don't want to pressure him too much. Just like you might be the most pleasant person every day, but if you have a bad migraine or you've injured yourself in some way, you're going to become a not as pleasant person. And so you don't want to push the boundaries too much with him. And then also, if he does decide to come into a place where we can see him, fantastic. If he's decided to go into a place where we can't see him, he's sort of made that choice, and we also just have to respect that. Now, I think, because he hasn't called again, there's also the possibility that maybe I just misheard a little bit. Let's just try a little bit farther down, and we'll see what happens. All right, well, I'm busy meandering around here. Let's go back to Scott and see what he's up to on his own 2 feet. Maybe he's found us some more track to look at, or maybe animal.
Hello everyone. We haven't found any tracks just yet. We've just been clearing up the rain cover that was actually over the camera, and happy that we got it off just in time. Well done to Noel for finding Tingana. We're getting closer to camp now. Quick, Link, we need to send you across to Noel.
All right, just as we start going away and just as we tell you we're going to go to Scott while we're busy looking, lo and behold, who comes into view? Mr. Tingana. Now we're just trying to position to be able to show you with the camera. Well done. So Sens, after we got off with you guys, Sens stood up in the back while I was driving along, and he managed to get this view, which is exactly what we wanted. So he was maybe 100 yards from where we were. And he's pretty much in the open. It's just a little bit harder for us. Senzo, you must just let me know. Maybe I must just do this. I think that might be our best bet for now, so that everyone can at least get a view of him. He's just in front here. Yay! Hello, Tingana. Look, he's even looking at us to say hello. Oh, fantastic. All right. So he is... Oh, there's the yawn. He's the last-minute leopard indeed. Lady Bird, you read my mind just as I was saying, listen. Very cool. Did everyone hear that? All right, now remember earlier I was saying the leopards usually do that when they're moving, and Tingana had moved. I think maybe with his injured paw that he's still trying to do as much territory marking audio and with urine as possible without moving as much either. He doesn't want to give up the ghost at all with this, which is a good plan, I think. And Lady Bird, yeah, you read my mind just as I was saying he's our last-minute leopard today. Your comment came through, and it was the same thing. Well done. Great minds think alike. So he yawned a bit. He did his audio territorial marking. The Franklins are going completely nuts next to me. And I'm hoping what he'll do is get up and start moving a little bit, because we can see him very nicely with the camera, which is fantastic, but there's a couple of spots that's a little bit farther down that makes it a little bit easier to see. But also, that being said, if he doesn't feel like moving, the old man also needs a bit of a rest. Sorry, Tingana, I just had to shift my foot there. So one of the reasons why he's probably moving a bit more now than he was this morning is it's getting cooler, getting towards night, and we were talking earlier about all the other males that like to come sort of infringe upon his territory. He needs to at least attempt to keep some of his territory during the next few days while he's recuperating. There we go. So you can see his little hop along. He can put a bit on there. It's much better than it was this morning. Which means that it's loosened up in this cooler weather. I believe everyone's saying, yay, Tingana. I'm agreeing. Yeah, so this morning, he's doing much better than he was doing this morning when I was watching him. This morning, he didn't want to put any weight on it, and now he's putting some weight. That's good. It's getting better. I think it's basically what's happening. I think it's just the fact that it's so swollen and it's not... Listen. This is fantastic. I think he hears another leopard, to be honest with you. And I think he's hearing, obviously his hearing's much better than mine. There he goes. Let's see if we can keep pace with him. Sorry, everybody, as I meander up the back here. Sorry for any branches, Senzo. Frank, you're curious to know if maybe he's got a thorn in his foot. Frank, it's possible. When I saw it earlier today, it looked like a sprained foot to me, but Tristan and VM spent some really good time with him yesterday, and they were saying they saw 2 little puncture marks in there, so we think he was in a fight with another leopard and that his paw was bit. That's what we think, because there's also apparently some scratches on his side. And it would make sense. There's enough other leopards in the area. There he is. He's scent marking with his urine. You can just see his bum end. It's very difficult. I'm going to try and... Sorry guys, he's being a typical leopard and going into a very difficult spot, so I am going to try my best. Alright, while I try and get you another view of this beautiful Tingana, let's go back to Scott and see what he's up to.
Yes, we are steadily approaching camp, looking forward to a cold beverage of sorts, and happy that Noel did manage to find Tingana for you guys. Let's hope that paw of his recovers sooner rather than later. I think it's going to remain a mystery to us exactly what happened. I also suggested maybe it was just a thorn in his foot initially, but I've been told that's definitely not the case. Ginger, you'd like to know how many miles we've walked today. We've taken it very easy today. We haven't moved far at all. I'd say maybe 2 miles. Yeah, I'd say 2 miles. But on average, we would walk around 6 to 7 miles on our average walk. Obviously, each one is different. Sometimes you hear alarm calls or on the trail of something and you hoof it, you cover huge distance. Other days, you don't need to cover as much ground. One afternoon, we spent the whole afternoon with some elephant bulls just in and around this very area. So it really does depend, but it's certainly been wonderful spending time out on foot, stretching the legs after being bundled in a vehicle in the Mara for the last 4 months. Scarlett, you'd like to know how heavy is the bush backpack that David is carrying, and it's quite light at the moment. It's been modified like everything here at Safari Live. It's permanently a work in progress, trying to make things better and more efficient. I actually used to be on camera for some of the bushwalks back in the day when Steph was leading. I would be on camera, and back then it was about, I think, 7 kgs or 8 kgs, whereas now it's only about 2 or 3, I think. So only about 6 pounds. It's very light. It's basically just a metal frame with the essentials bolted onto it. Before we had a big plank of wood, much heavier, less efficient batteries that we had to lug around and change off and halfway through the walk. But right now, it's really not too much of a burden for the cameraman, thankfully. Definitely more than nothing. What gets in the way more than anything is the long antenna. Once we can get rid of that, then it'll be far easier for us to sneak around undetected on the bushwalks. Often we have to kind of plan our route when approaching elephants through areas where there's no low overhanging branches, which often provide us with the best cover. So it does make things a little bit tricky for us. Certainly not as tricky as taking regular guests on a walk, though. I'll tell you that much. Just having Herbie and Dave to worry about if something did go wrong is a lot less stressful than having 3 or 4 guests. Ordinarily you would have 4 guests per rifle. If you took any more than 4 guests on a walk, you should in theory take a second backup rifle so that you can herd them more effectively when things get out of control, which they do from time to time. But we've got quite a slick operation in terms of sneaking about undetected. Very good. We are going to continue moseying on back towards camp. We might get a few views of the resident herd of wildebeest and their youngsters before we get there, so that would be nice. For you, back to Tingana.
Here he is. I'm always still so impressed with this zoom that we have on our camera, because where he's sitting from here is not easy to see with your own 2 eyes, but when you get the camera in there, it's absolutely fantastic. So he's hobbled along down to this little spot, and he's just listening and looking around and keeping an eye out, smelling the wind a little bit every now and then. Bobby, what an interesting question. You're curious to know, will Tingana run away from a fight now because he's got this injury? I actually think, Bobby, because he can't move very quickly, I don't think he'd run away. I think he's going to stand his ground more. Remember, he's still a very large leopard. He's probably about 80, 85 kilograms, if not a little bit more. So that would be about 200 pounds, roughly, just a little bit under. So his best chance is to sort of cover his parts that are easier to get into, so his backside, and then use his teeth and his front claws. And the adrenaline will rush through enough that if you were to start fighting at close quarters, he would still use his injured foot. But something else that he would do is, if another leopard started coming up, he's going to use his voice before he uses his fist. So when we were all kids, we were all taught to use our words, not our hands. So he's going to use his words first, and only then, if he gets any further approach, will he start using his claws and things like that, and his teeth. So he'll spit, he'll snarl, he'll grunt, he'll hiss, and he'll try and sound big and also not show his weakness to his opponent. Eagle, that's an interesting question. You're wondering, what would lions do if they heard Tingana sign? So if the lions are extremely close, they might get interested if they can hear and smell him. But if they're farther away, they'll still hear it and they'll perk their ears up, but they're not going to go rushing after it. I've seen lions rush after leopards that they've physically seen, as opposed to leopards that they've heard, unless that leopard has made a kill of some sort and then they've rushed into the area. So where Tingana is going to meander, from what I can see now, oh no, you had to be that guy, and he went up the other bank. Tingana, we only have a couple minutes left. Do you really have to be like that? Oh guys, I'm so sorry. I'm not gonna be able to get where he went to. I'm very sorry about that. It is a very, very tricky little spot here. All right, thank you very much for the drive. It was filled with lots of wonderful little moments as usual. And don't forget, 14th of December, which is today, on 10 o'clock Eastern Time, on Nat Geo Wild, we're having our special Safari Live show. So please, please, please tune in. We can't wait. For us, it's tomorrow morning. For you, it's tonight. So it's going to be absolutely amazing and hopefully action-packed and big cat-packed. It is Big Cat Week on Nat Geo Wild, which is why we're getting our special show aired then, and it's going to be, I can't wait. I'm so excited. It's my first TV show with Safari Live, and everyone else that's going to be with me tomorrow, they've done other TV shows before, and they're just as excited as I am. So thank you very much for a wonderful afternoon drive. We will see you in a little while.